Okay, everyone, we're going to get started. Good morning, fellow commissioners. Assistant Chief Choi, Executive Director Django Sibley, Assistant Inspector General Brian Buckner, Senior Assistant City Attorney Carlos de la Guerra, Madam Secretary, and members of the public. Today is Tuesday, December 16, 2025. It is 9:30 a.m. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Please let the record reflect Commissioners Shields, Garcia, and Scobin are present. And the correction, it's Lisa Ridout for the IG's office.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
We welcome everyone attending this morning, both in person and online. We want to ensure all members of the public can access our meetings. So if you need any translation services or accommodations, we encourage you to contact the board secretary in advance of our meetings, as explained in our written agenda. These meetings are regular meetings between the board and the department. We welcome feedback from the public during the public comment period, which will be heard during item number 2 on the agenda. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board. You can speak to any item on the agenda or any matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. We will dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. Each member of the public can have a total of up to 3 minutes to speak if you wish to speak on both agenda items and general public comment, as explained in the written agenda. While we welcome public attendance at our meetings, disruptive behavior will not be tolerated and will be cause for removal. You will receive just one warning, and if you continue disrupting the meeting, you will be asked to leave and be removed from the meeting. And before we move on to item number 1, I do have a couple of edits to the agenda. Item 3M and item 4C will be removed from the agenda and moved to a future date. With that, we'll move to item number 1 on the agenda, the report of the Chief of Police. Assistant Chief Choi.
Thank you, and good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Assistant Inspector General Ridout, City Attorney De La Guerra, and Executive Director Sibley. So today I'm going to cover some key events from the past week, sharing our latest crime trends, and providing an update on our staffing levels. I'm going to start with the officer-involved shooting that occurred early this morning at approximately 2:18 hours. Topanga patrol officers responded to a radio call of a burglary suspect there now at the 20,000 block of Satakoy Street on the second level of an apartment complex. The comments of the radio call advised that the suspect was breaking windows, entered an apartment through the window, and was armed with a bat. Upon officers' arrival, they were directed to the apartment. They saw the suspect, later identified as Edgar Ramirez, exiting apartment 207 while holding a metal pole. Officers gave Ramirez commands to drop the pole, and one officer deployed the taser twice. This taser was ineffective. Ramirez advanced towards the officers while armed with a metal pole, and an officer-involved shooting occurred. Ramirez was struck by gunfire but did not submit to arrest. Officers used bodily force to take Ramirez to the ground. Additional officers arrived and assisted with eventually handcuffing and taking Ramirez into custody. Ramirez was transported to the hospital by the fire department and is in stable condition. 2 apartment residents received non-threatening injuries during the struggle with Ramirez. No other injuries were reported, and FID has responded and is assuming the investigation. Year-to-date, the department has recorded 44 officer-involved shootings compared to 26 during the same time last year, which is an increase of 69%. Additional significant events that occurred in the prior week. Over the weekend, there were 2 significant acts of violence that occurred outside of Los Angeles, as well as a major terrorism-related arrest here at home. On Saturday, a campus shooting at Brown University claimed the lives of 2 students. This followed by a terrorist attack at Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia, where 15 people were killed. As these incidents unfolded, the Los Angeles Police Department was in immediate contact with our federal, state, and local law enforcement partners across the country and internationally to assess any potential impact to the city of Los Angeles. Given that the attack in Sydney targeted the Jewish community, we took proactive steps here locally. We immediately increased patrols and visibility at Jewish institutions, houses of worship, and community events throughout the city. And we reached out directly to our Jewish stakeholders to reassure them that our presence and support. With the Hanukkah season underway, We are committed to ensuring that all holiday events across the city of Los Angeles are safe for those who gather and celebrate. In addition, we have increased patrols and visibility around university campuses and other locations where large groups may gather out of an abundance of caution. These incidents serve as a reminder of the importance of vigilance. We continue to encourage the public, if you see something, say something. Here locally, the department also participated in a major terrorism-related disruption alongside our federal and local partners through the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force. This operation resulted in the arrest of 4 individuals. Detectives from our Major Crimes Division played a key role in the success of this investigation. The investigation revealed that the group was actively preparing to carry out attacks on New Year's Eve using improvised explosive devices and had identified multiple potential targets both in Los Angeles and Orange counties. Because of the coordinated efforts of our law enforcement partners, this plan was disrupted and those involved were taken into custody without incident. We're proud of the strength of our partnerships and the work of everyone involved in keeping our city safe. This case demonstrates the value of collaboration, intelligence sharing, and proactive policing in preventing violence before it occurs. And then moving on to the double homicide. On December 14th, at approximately 3:40 p.m., officers from West Los Angeles Division responded to a radio call regarding the death in the 200 block of Chadbourne Avenue. Upon arrival, officers located 2 deceased individuals inside the residence, later identified as Rob Reiner and Michelle Reiner. Both victims were found in the master bedroom of the area of the home. Officers conducted a thorough search of the residence to determine whether there were any additional victims or suspects, and no one else was located. The Los Angeles Police Department's Robbery Homicide Division, Homicide Special Section, assumed the investigation of the case. Based on the information developed during the early stages of the investigation, the victim's son, Nick Reiner, was identified as a person of interest. At approximately 9:15 p.m. on that same day, on that evening, Nick Reiner was located in the area of USC and was taken into custody without incident. Nick Reiner has been booked for murder and is currently being held without bail. This case will be presented to the District Attorney's Office for filing consideration, I believe, this afternoon. And then a B platoon or Metropolitan Platoon burglary arrest that I'd like to talk about. On December 12th, officers from Metropolitan Division's B platoon assisted Topanga area burglary detectives with an ongoing investigation into a burglary crew believed to be responsible for at least 7 commercial burglaries in the Topanga area. Through investigative work, officers identified a suspect vehicle and began surveillance. During the early morning hours of December 12th, officers observed the suspects actively committing burglaries at 2 adjacent businesses by smashing the front windows and entering the locations. Uniformed officers were immediately requested and responded quickly, resulting in both suspects being taken into custody without incident. Both individuals were booked for burglary. This investigation remains ongoing as detectives continue working to identify any additional suspects and determine whether the crew was linked to any other crimes or burglaries. And then moving on to crime. For the 4-week period from November 16th through December 13th, combined persons and property crimes declined by 12.5% compared to the prior 4-week period. Person crimes were down 10.5% and property crimes declined by 13.1%. Looking specific at homicides, year to date, the city has seen a reduction of 20.3% compared to the same time last year. That's 55 less homicide victims this year. Victim shootings continue to trend in the right direction citywide. Victims shot are down 8% year to date compared to 2024, which is 76 less victims shot this year. Violent crime categories also showed improvement. Aggravated assaults declined by 12.6% over the past 4 weeks. Robberies declined by 12% citywide, with most robberies continuing to involve strong arm robberies rather than suspects armed with weapons or firearms. Property crimes continue to decline overall. Burglaries dropped by more than 19% over the past 4 weeks. Both residential and non-residential burglaries showed decreases citywide. Motor vehicle thefts also declined by nearly 13% during the 4-week period. Our personnel strength, sworn personnel as of December 15th is at 8674, civilian personnel staffing is at 2511, and our reserve officers are at 344. And that ends my report.
Thank you, Chief Choi. I'll start with questions from fellow commissioners. Commissioner Scobin?
Yes, thank you, Chief, for the report. For start off, thankful to hear about the thwart of the New Year's Day plan. No doubt saving countless lives. So kudos to that. I wanted to follow up on a couple items that I've brought up over the last few weeks. One is the increase in officer-involved shootings. I'd ask the chief if he had any data from neighboring agencies, specifically the sheriff's department, to understand how their year-to-date numbers compare to ours. And he hadn't at the last meeting. I didn't know if you by any chance have that information.
We're doing a formal report back to the commission, but I can tell you, looking at, and I won't name the agency, but another significant agency here locally, it's tough to compare because we're not doing apples to apples comparisons. For example, this one larger agency that we looked at, they only track officer-involved shootings with hits. So if you discharge your firearm at someone and it doesn't hit that person, they don't count that as a use of force. So we're trying to figure out how to best compare apples to apples and then present it to this commission.
Is there any idea when we could expect that?
I can get back to you on that. I don't have
Okay.
time on it.
I just, obviously, it's troubling for a lot of different reasons, especially when you look at how these have happened, and, I think it's important for us to dig deep. The other one is we had talked about, the chief had mentioned about bringing a subject matter expert on our crowd control tactics, methods, and policy, and I just wanted to bring that back because I think it's important for us, at least for myself, to have a good understanding as to where we're at with that, so we have a clear understanding of tactics, tools, and policies. Thank you.
Great. And Commissioner Garcia?
Thank you, Chief, for the report. Similar question regarding the 26 officer-involved shootings and that 69% increase. Looking forward to the report. In that report or in that analysis, can we also include not just what Commissioner Scobin is requesting, but also looking at how those departments are handling similar type of incidents that potentially did not result in officer-involved shootings? Again, it may not be an apples to apples, but if we can look at a profile type of incident, if that's possible, or profiles, and again, looking at what the deployment look like, or strategy look like, or tactic look like for those departments of similar type of incidents, again, to be able to see what they're doing around that type of incident, but also what they're doing with the goal of how preventing the officer-involved shootings in those type of incidents.
Okay, okay. I think maybe we can talk offline to kind of distill what we can access from other departments.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Scobin, for mentioning that report. I think it will be helpful. And Chief, you mentioned during the most recent OIS that the taser was utilized a couple of times without it being effective. And so hopefully the report that you provide or further discussions that we have about officer-involved shootings, we understand whether less lethal use of force was attempted. It may be harder to get from the neighboring departments, but at least we know we have our own numbers to compare it to as to when less lethal was utilized. And it may, and I understand, I think when we deal with our use of force annual report, we sometimes have a lot more detail about the number of calls that officers actually respond to. And I don't know whether we also break it down into like how many times are officers, approached with someone with a gun or approached with someone with an edged weapon and a knife. And that would be a helpful also comparison, right? Because if the LAPD is responding to thousands of calls and being approached with people with edged weapons hundreds of times, it may put the numbers in perspective a little bit. With regards to the terrorist plot here locally being foiled, again, that is something that just can't be understated, and it's always after the fact, when people say, why wasn't this stopped, that people, pay attention to this. So congratulations to all of those involved. And I do think it's good to know that, the federal partners are still looking at this and not being too busy doing other things that we would, prefer them to be focused on, really uncovering terrorist attacks like this. And so it's good that we still have those relationships where that type of communication is ongoing. And thank you also for being proactive. A couple of questions I was going to have was about the mass shootings that we've been seeing across the country and across the world, and what we are doing to prepare here. And I imagine for the, university type shootings, that, do we have relationships with all our local universities so that there's, protocols already in place as to how you would handle a mass shooter incident?
Yes, we do. We're connected with all our major universities, even our local LA Unified campuses, and work with their policing agencies.
Thank you. And also thank you for stepping up the additional patrols around the Jewish institutions, given the tragedy that occurred in Australia. There was also talk last week with the city council about funding relating to officer hiring. And given the numbers, can you talk a little bit about what 2026 is going to look like in terms of hiring, and where you think that puts us with the attrition that we are having in the department?
Sure. So I'll talk about the calendar years. So currently, the first 6 months of 2026 calendar year, we have approval to hire up to 40 recruits for the month of January. That's the funding that exists. In January, when council comes back from recess, we have to go back to Budget and Finance Committee, get approval or a plan, identify funding to hire for the rest of the 5 months through the fiscal year, March through June. And then we're currently working on a proposal for a budget, obviously for fiscal year 26-27, but that's we're still in the early stages. We need to identify funding. Our attrition is going to be around, right now it's projected to be 552 approximately, and those are known attrition numbers. We always have several unanticipated retirements or departures, so it's probably going to be higher than that. And if we can still hire through June, the number is 410. So if we hire all the way through June of 26, we would have hired 410 for the entire fiscal year, but we're going to lose right now known 552. So we're going the wrong way in preparing for these major events and staffing up our patrol forces, our investigative forces. Again, it's not just about patrol. We just talked about a terrorism plot and other things that our folks are doing to keep the city safe, proactively. So it's just so important that the city be able to identify funds to continue to hire throughout this fiscal year, and even then, it's not enough.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. And I know that, especially around the holidays and things like that, there's a lot of events that the department members put on for community members throughout, and partner with, other city council members to put on things for Toys for Tots and other things like that. And so it would be good to know a little bit or get some reports periodically of the type of different events that the officers are doing to be out there in the community. And I wanted to highlight one that I was able to attend over the weekend, where it was North Hollywood Division just did a walk with a cop in light of a couple of burglaries that had occurred in the neighborhood. And I think the community members were very grateful for that type of attention, so that they at least know that this is an issue that is being taken seriously, and given more information to help themselves and create more of a community. And so grateful for North Hollywood for taking that initiative to plan. And I know that this happens throughout the city. And so I think identifying and highlighting a couple every once in a while in this meeting would be helpful.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move to item number 2 on the agenda, public comment. Madam Secretary, please call on the first speaker.
The first speaker is James Rolstad.
Morning, my name is James Rolstad. On January 11th, 2025, my 43-year-old son was shot and killed by LAPD. I'm not going to claim my son was an angel. He was not an angel. Okay, he was serving a prison sentence, and he belonged there. He committed a very violent crime. However, I believe there are limitations to things, time as well as otherwise. The most important thing to my son was his son. His son is now 17 years old, my firstborn grandson. And I haven't seen him since he was 3.5. And my son had not seen him since he was 14 months old. My son loved his son, Jacob, more than anything in the world. Not to the incident on January 11th. The entire scene was total chaos from the beginning. Nobody was in charge. There was no supervisor, apparently no sergeant. No one knew what the hell they were doing. The officers knew, or should have known, they were dealing with and failed to accommodate a serious mental health disability, a known mental health disability. At times there were as many as 5 or 6 officers yelling at the top of their lungs simultaneously. How in the hell is someone supposed to react to a bunch of voices just saying just a bunch of words? I mean, anybody in their right mind would be scared in that situation. But somebody with mental health disabilities is a total disaster for them. Then there was the issue of the rubber bullets. And I understand that the rubber bullets are used because they are non-lethal force. He was shot more than once with the rubber bullets. First time, I believe he was shot 4 times, and he was hit 4 times, and he was knocked to the ground. He was on the ground for about 10 seconds. Anyone looking at the video can count from 1 to 10 and see that it was a long time that he was on the ground, and something should have been done then. He should have been subdued while he was on the ground and not given a chance to get back up. But he was given a chance to get back up. He got back up and started walking toward the officers again. He was rubber bullet shot again. Knocked to the ground again. Prior to the actual fatal shot being fired, there was, I believe it was a female officer, but there was a definite officer's voice saying the words, "Shoot him again, shoot him again, shoot him again, shoot him again," 5 times. This officer was yelling, "Shoot him again." There was another officer that said the words, "Taser, taser, taser." Well, that was completely ignored. After he was shot, I heard an officer, at least one officer, say, "I don't have a trauma bag. Does anyone have a trauma bag?" Apparently, the trauma bag, I'm not familiar with exactly what it is, but apparently that's something that can be used for a seriously injured person. For 14 years, my son was locked up. In those 14 years, probably 7 or 8 different prisons. Because the state of California likes, in spite of what they say in court, they love to move inmates around and get them away from the family, not close to the family. For 14 years, he was very careful because he knew where he was and the possible consequences of doing something that he'd be better off not doing. And if this instance is looked at as my son being a bully, I understand that, but he was not a bully. That was not in his nature. His nature was to keep his own butt safe. Okay. The officer that shot and killed my son happened to be a female officer. Why did she shoot when she did, and the male officer that was standing right next to her, did not shoot? Wrongful death, negligence, escalation of a serious situation, misconduct, incompetence, excessive force, ineffective or non-existent mental health training, deliberate indifference to serious medical needs, deliberate. What the police did that day was criminal. 100% criminal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry for your loss.
Next, we have Star over Zoom. Star, you're on.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chief Choi, for being present today, and thank you for the report. I just want to thank all LAPD officers for the great work that they do, and especially thwarting this massive crime and this pre-planned devastation that could have happened on New Year's Eve. So good job to those officers. And thank you so much for being out in our communities and working with our kids and giving these kids a little Christmas joy with all your good services. So thank you so much for that. Let's keep that up. Community services are very important and we enjoy it and we would like more of that. And also, I want, living in Los Angeles for over 50 years, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see what's going on in MacArthur Park, where the elected person doesn't show up for the last 3 meetings because it's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. You know what's going on, so we won't get into that. There was a time we can actually go out and take our kids out for walks and enjoy that. It's become very dangerous, and it's very sad that police officers can't do their jobs. We do support them. We do want them there, and we do want them there to protect and make sure that we're safe when we're out in LA. It's become dangerous out there. It really has. And until people of Los Angeles stop voting for these people that want to defund and abolish the police, this is what you're going to get. This is what we're going to get. And unfortunately, all of us suffer the consequences. So, Angelinos, be careful what you wish for. Why? Why are needles being handed out? Why is this being handed out to people that actually need help, not contribute to their addiction and to their death and to us being unsafe? It's disgraceful. But with that all said, thank you, Chief, for being there. Thank you, Ms. Rasha, for supporting our police officers. To the new commissioner, welcome. Apologies for all the insults you get every week. Thank you to the most diverse, hardworking, good-hearted police in all the country. So with that said, Merry Christmas to all of you, and God bless our LAPD. Good job. We want you in our communities. We need you, and thank you for everything you do day in and day out. Bye.
The next speaker, please, Megan.
I just love the crusade this morning that Scobin, all three of you went on really to continue to demand that the LAPD investigate itself for its officer-involved shootings. I'm just wondering if any of you have ever heard anybody associated with LAPD ever say that they should not have shot someone. Have you ever heard them say that? Ever? Reports, we're looking into it. It's troubling. Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. You don't actually give a shit. You just want the appearance of giving a shit. That's the first time I've ever heard you say sorry for your loss, Rasha, but you'll say sorry for the loss of an officer down every time. The first agenda item, $2.2 million, supposedly for the enforcement of tobacco laws, really just easy overtime for your lazy, entitled officers. So on the surface, regulating the sale of tobacco to minors might seem like a public good, but as with everything with the LAPD, when you lightly scratch the surface, there is a sordid cesspool of aberrant behavior. When you open up the document attached to the agenda, you read about how part of the operations are stings using decoy minors, and those minors are recruited from the cadet program, which has a long history of abuse of children. For instance, in 2018, a girl in your cadet program was sexually abused, impregnated, and forced to take an abortion pill by Officer Robert Kane. Chief Charlie Beck ran cover for the pedophile and racist by saying, quote, "It was all consensual," and that there was no force, fear, or intimidation used. Echoing remarks made 42 years earlier from Deputy Chief Daryl Gates, who described the sexual relationships between 6 officers and 16 teenage cadets as, quote, "No rape, no seduction. There was a lot of agreement," end quote. Thank you to the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition for drawing that particularly horrifying line through history. In 2015, Cadet Youth Services Officer and 9-year veteran of the department, Montez de Oca, is investigated for sending lewd messages and photos to a 16-year-old recruit. His lawyer took care to note that the girl was post-pubescent. There are dozens of other examples over the decades of LAPD officers and employees raping children either on their time or via other opportunities afforded to them directly from the LAPD. The fact is that pedophiles, misogynists, and abusers are protected by LAPD in Scientology, in their own ranks. As recently reported in the LA Times, LAPD refused to release domestic abuse records concerning its own officers to the state oversight body for over a year in violation of the law. LAPD is also assisting ICE, masked militiamen sent there by a president who is most likely a pedophile himself and certainly kept close relationships with known pedophiles. This institution is, by its nature, and it's exceptionally heinous.
Ma'am, your time's up. Next speaker, please.
Next, we have Audit LA over Zoom.
Good morning. Yes, I sent a letter of inquiry to the chief, the police commission, Chief Choi, to you as well. I really hope you will answer because over the weekend, okay, the Scientology had their event at the Shrine. Every single Bureau of Street Service special event permit does not include restriction of pedestrians, only vehicles. But somehow Scientology got LAPD and CD9 to override that, even though the city attorney's office told them many times over the prior, no, it is only for vehicles, not pedestrians. But somehow they changed it to where they made it for local only. So they had slave labor Sea Org members checking IDs of the students who live in the dorms there, so they can pass through. So it's not even and the police were there. We were told that the police were no longer doing their overtime with Scientology. It is such a bad look. Victims are coming forward, and I have no idea why we're regressing and why Scientology is the only entity allowed to change what is already in the law and in the codes for what the permits allow and don't allow. They do not allow any restriction to pedestrian traffic. That is in writing. And to do so is, because the city attorney mentioned prior restraint, and I'm going to mention viewpoint discrimination. The city is going to be sued. It is coming, and it's all going to be because Scientology has so much hold over you. And I don't understand. Like, you need to make that break. Stop letting them make you break the rules and the laws. Like, unless you can please show me, I sent the letters. Please show me where LAPD has the authority to override what the Bureau of Street Services, what the special event permits allow. Because that's the law. That's the law, and how you were able to override that, and why you had Scientology looking at the IDs of students to see if they could go home. It's insane. And please, this is going to be to the point where the media is eventually going to pick up these stories because it's endless. And I'm trying to prevent the city from further scrutiny, from further, liabilities. But you're not working with me here. You keep staying in bed with Scientology. It has to stop. And they are it was for two people. What they're so worried. There was two people there and one of them's Laura FM, who comes. She's a victim of Scientology, looking for her dad. She's there looking for her father to get a glimpse of him. And you had to have, and they closed down the entire street. They closed the whole neighborhood.
And before we call the next speaker, just for those of you in the gallery, if you'd like to speak, you can step out and speak. Otherwise, you're taking up other people's time. So let's have the next speaker, please.
Andrew Gravener.
I know, don't speak, don't breathe, don't open your eyes in this room. So, starting off with the Chief's report should be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes at every meeting. If it exceeds 3 minutes, we shall match the amount of time the Chief takes. And regardless of how long the Chief takes to give his report, everyone should speak both in person and on the phone. You should take all Zoom callers, not just the bootlickers who say racist and homophobic shit on Zoom. They always seem to get through, but normal people who want to opine this department and criticize it never seem to get through. Doesn't matter what name I submit, how many devices I sign up on, I never get through if I call it on Zoom. So, where's McDonald? He's been skipping all these meetings recently. Is he too afraid to show up? Is he just, he knows that people are going to yell at him and such every time, so he's just skipping it? He's too afraid to face the public? He's been, I don't know if you watch anything he does, but, he's been at city council, literally every time city council wants to put even a shred of accountability on him or anything, he goes there and says an absolutely terrifying speech about, trying to bully them to not, hold him accountable. They They were trying to prevent the LAPD from using less lethal munitions on protesters and such. And he went there and threatened to just have his officers start shooting protesters and press with lethal munitions. Lethal munitions. And
Ma'am,
none of
I've
you
given
have
you a
any-
couple warning. This is your first official warning. If you continue speaking or disrupting the meeting, you will be asked to leave.
Yeah,
You've
she's
already
not
had an
disrupting.
opportunity.
So it's fine. She's not disrupting me. They've shot 44 people this year. 44 people. We just heard from one of the family members of one of the people you shot this year. Your department shot. 44 people, and none of you have anything to say really about it. No, you say, oh, well, we get a report back from the LAPD. They'll investigate themselves, I guess, and figure it out. I don't know. This is all under McDonald's leadership. He's making the LAPD more violent. And gosh, I don't know who would have predicted that. Maybe the majority of LA County voters who elected him out as sheriff in 2018. And then you thought it would be a good idea to make him police chief for some reason. Why? He was elected out. The voters rejected him. They said, we don't want this guy running a police department. And you just go ahead and hire him for police chief. And yeah, I know the mayor appointed him, but some of you were on the commission who recommended McDonald to pass. It's the commission who recommends the candidates, and then the mayor picks it. So some of you are responsible for putting this violent jerk in charge of LAPD. So, we've got a number of consent agenda items. We have some security guard services, stuff for the security services division. We've got a cable subscription for the security services division. I wonder if the cable subscription was how the cops in this building were watching Newsmax in the lobby once a while ago. I wonder if that's that cable subscription. That's what your officers are watching. Newsmax. Should say something about this department. So, and you've got security, private security, contract security. I'm old enough to remember it wasn't that long ago that the security guards were didn't seem to know how to use their guns and were just accidentally firing them in the lobby over at City Hall. And there's pretty much nothing from any of you about that, if I remember right. This is why McDonald acts the way he does, because he knows that you will never hold him accountable for anything. You don't hold this department accountable at all. He's never held accountable. Nobody in this department is ever held accountable by you. You just rubber stamp absolutely everything. There's so much on the agenda. I can't even get to all this shit here. It's just so much violence. Let's hear from all speakers today. Every single one of them in the room, everyone on the call-in line, everyone should get a chance to be heard today. Fire McDonald.
Next, we have Mirjam on Zoom. Mirjam, you're on.
Can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
Yes, I would like to speak on all items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Thank you. I want to echo what Audit LA was saying regarding the usage of LAPD for protecting Scientology from two persons observing their New Year's event on the Shrine at the Shrine Auditorium. What the hell is that? Why are you using the resources that you claim to be lacking all the time on the Scientology nonsense? What kind of hold of you do they have? It doesn't make any sense. There is no kind of reasonable threat over there. There is nothing to protect. Also, where is Jim McDonald? Because right now, with the amount of police officers doing the work for Scientology, I'm thinking if he's maybe moonlighting at the L. Ron Hubbard Winter Wonderland on Hollywood Boulevard. He certainly has the looks and the physique for that. That fits a little bit better than for a police chief. Merry Christmas.
The next speaker, please, William Good.
Good morning. So I got Dominic Choi right here. Last year, August 24th, I emailed you because I became aware of a situation where one of the employees here in the department used glasses, Google Lens glasses, to film a sergeant's test and then was selling that test around the LAPD. I asked you about it. You said you knew nothing about it. 3 weeks later, it's in the LA Times saying that there was an investigation underway. You lied to me. I'm used to you lying to me. He lied to you guys too. Rasha, you were on the email. Of course, Karen Bass was on that email and she would do nothing. So I got a stalker now, and his name is Al Labrada. You guys familiar with him? According to the LA Times, you guys were considering him for a police chief. Now, Rasha says that's not true. I'll believe you on that, Rasha. But Al Labrada is my new stalker. He's stalking me because I posted his text messages to his victim that he was stalking with an air tag where he was telling her he was going to cut her up, that he was going to bury her in the ground, that he was going to turn her into Portuguese sushi. The guy is a sick fuck, so he's been stalking the hell out of me. I like it, though. I enjoy that stuff. I'll continue doing it. I'm going to continue doing it to you. But we come to find out that he had a restraining order against him by his victim. When the restraining order was up, he started filing complaints with these guys, with Choi in them, against his victim. And the LAPD is now has the victim under investigation. It gets worse. She's under criminal investigation now. They're trying to have her prosecuted, a victim of harassment. They're trying to have prosecuted. You are really sick people. This is the retaliation you're going to have at the LAPD. Now, you were talking about recruitment. Guys, I'm going to tell you, if you're considering joining the LAPD, don't. They are a disgrace. If you are a woman, they are going to harass you. They are going to put you through hell. They are going to sleaze you. Find some place else to go. Do not join the LAPD. And I got to say, you know, all this is happening under Karen Bass's watch. They are retaliating against victims under Karen Bass. Everybody up here was appointed by Karen Bass. I know they say this is, you know, the OIG is an independent, body. They're not. The OIG was appointed by the commission, who was appointed by Karen Bass. You guys all work for her. And we're watching this disgrace happen in our city, and Karen Bass has done nothing. I'm going to ask you, have you ever heard Karen Bass one time as mayor criticize the LAPD? One time, not one time. Now, they had a restraining order issued against them for beating a journalist. Karen Bass said nothing. And then an injunction was put in place, and Karen Bass said nothing. And these shootings are increasing nonstop, and Karen Bass says nothing. So I think what we need to do is get Karen Bass out of office and get somebody else in here. And Dominic, like I said, you lied to me. Fuck you.
The next speaker, please, Jonathan Foster.
Hello, Jonathan Foster. Wanted to start with West Virginia National Guard, shot by terrorist Sarah Beckstrom, 20 years old. Just don't forget. Boy, Rasha, it's a cold day in hell. And Mr. Rolstead, I'm partly responsible for why they shot one time. That's what I've requested from the police department. And that's why they didn't shoot your son 27 times. And what happened to Rolstead is a little bit what happened to Ramirez today that the chief talked about. And so in Rolstead, they did shoot him twice with beanbags. He fell down twice again with beanbags, not 40 millimeter. They killed him. They were supposed to shoot him in the stomach. And I admit the net guns don't always work, but it would have worked, right? They shot him with beanbags twice, so that a net gun, 2 nets, he would have fell down, then they could deal with him. This could have worked with Yang Yang and Linda Becerra Marron. This is Denny Zine. He was talking about the police, and he talks about murder and homicides, which is not something really the police can talk about. But then he said this.
I do know that homicides are up this year over last year, year to date. They are up. The other categories, I can't give you a calling because the numbers we don't have a lot of confidence in as far as being published.
He doesn't have a lot of confidence in what's being published, so we know that the LAPD is lying. Denny Zine is not wrong. Right? So in Rolstead, they could have done the net gun. And I've noticed that the officer that shot him is not on the video. The cam for the officer that shot's not on the video. So we don't know the distance. And I know he wasn't charging. He was only walking. He was supposed to shoot in the stomach. This is why I'm the chief of police. Who's protecting the police officers? You had that psychological evaluation stuff on the last meeting. So now this police officer has to take a psychological evaluation for murder, right? He didn't have to murder this person. Did not have to murder this. By the way, on another topic, on recruitment, right now there's about 8,000 officers. If each officer brings in one person, department doubles. That's all you got to do is bring in one. You bring in one, you bring in one, you bring in one. I'm in charge. Bring in one. We have 8,000. 16,000. Seconds. Yeah, and the net gun would have worked with the guy with the 7-foot cord. So what could happen? They could fall down, maybe break a wrist, a knee, or something. But they live. And if we're protecting people, if we're trying to keep people living, when you get the call, mentally ill dude with a knife, shouldn't you think net gun?
Patricia Mendoza.
Good morning, commissioners, Chief Choi, officers, and the public. I read the agenda. I have no questions. Today, I'm here to advocate for myself. I need your urgent help. The house where I live, they're doing construction work next door. Last year, they removed the whole foundation, so she was punished for a whole year and a half. She has all these citations, and construction started a month and a half ago again. And my brother brought a engineering structure that specializes in the structure. He confirmed that all this year, the property is shifting because we're kind of like a downhill. The only thing I need is for an officer to show up and ask these people for their business card, their construction license, because I strongly believe they have no license. You have a lot of people, and I believe they're illegal, these people, and they don't know what they're doing because they messed up the lady's plumbing twice. The case right now is at LA Housing. It was transferred to the senior inspector in North Hollywood in the Valley. They're preparing all the documents, hopefully by next week, to send it to the city attorney. I went yesterday to Norwalk to find out where the landlord lives. I'm gonna give her notice, write a letter today. And being Mexican American, and you have all these illegal people laughing at me because I've been respectful and civil, trying to educate them that what they're doing is wrong, taking pictures of all these trucks. Just this morning, there was like 10 trucks pulling up, dropping off cement. They just laugh at me. And I say, if I would be doing this in your country, in Mexico, you would send someone to beat me up or have me arrested. Right now, I'm very angry. They think they can get away with all this crime. City inspector told me here on Tempo and Figueroa that if she would be doing this in Beverly Hills or in Granada Hills or Glendale, she would have been arrested. I went to the fire department last week. They said they were going to call it in for me. I don't think they did. I have to call 311, and they usually take about an hour. So I need your help today. I would very, very much appreciate if I can get someone over there when I call, because I did call the Rampart. They couldn't help me. It becomes tiring when you have like 30 men laughing at me and they can't provide a business card just to prove that, they have a license. I try to show them the documents of everything what the inspector says. They don't say they don't care. They're going to do what they have to do. Thank you.
Hassan Tran.
Sorry, one more thing. My house is about to collapse and hers. I have pictures. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Police Chief, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for the last week. I spoke to Police Chief Jim McDonald. I asked him for help me, and we fighting for better America. He said yes, he support me. Then I asked some police around here, everybody here, they agree with me. But very important, like I'm very poor man, and my English not very well. I cannot do this job, but I come here. You all of you here, you got more power to do the job with me, and we do protect America, and we will do better for around the world. It's very important. Like I said, I cannot do this job, but all of you here, you can help me, and we will do it. Okay? So very important. And I remember I come here, I say, every day if you work for U.S. government, you go to work for government, you have to remember my name. It's very important. If you remember my name and you go work for U.S. government, and this is better for America, better for the world. It's very important. Thank you. So don't forget me. And share the information. I'm here every day for this, for America, and good for everybody. Thank you very much. God bless America. God bless all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker, Michael Ackerman.
Good morning. First, as a reminder, I'm asking each of you to personally issue statements asking the governor to do a military-level investigation of police misconduct, and if you're unwilling to do this, to state your reason. Second, I want to talk about a different police department. The Los Angeles District Attorney has an investigation bureau which employs 300 sworn officers. So while it's not in the same league as the LAPD, it's still a big department. They are of special interest because they are supposed to investigate public corruption, but for whatever reason, they do not have a civilian oversight board like you. However, there is an established system of civilian oversight everywhere in the country, regardless of whether they have boards like this. It is called the jury system. But what happens when police officers or officers of the court fail to put suspected criminals in front of juries? What happens is that they've subverted the entire criminal process. I think that most people would agree that if one human empties a handgun into another human for any reason, he's earned himself a date with the grand jury. That's where the real civilian oversight occurs. And if some bureaucrat tries to stop it, he should also go before the grand jury.
The next speaker, JC.
What were you doing at 7:30 a.m. last Thursday morning? What were you doing at 7:30 last Thursday morning when your armed police minions were pulling up on 6th Street to conduct a violent sweep and force people to drag their dwelling places out of the way of the city's militarized sanitation machine? What makes you think people having clean spaces to live in requires police to show up with guns and threaten people to move? Move where? All you've provided is prisons. If you want cleaner streets, abolish the police. If you want sanitation, abolish the police. If you want care for the people, abolish the police and abolish yourselves. Why don't any of you go down there on a Thursday morning and see what your billion-dollar spending sprees are doing? Go down there and you'll see a message especially for you. It's a poster put up by a community member, and it says, "Sweeps kill. Your dollars kill. Your 7:30 a.m. Thursday morning rituals of obliviousness kill. You're all killer cops, everyone on this board, by your complicity. You're supposed to be a body of oversight. The only thing you look over are the bodies of people suffering under your humiliation. People know how to care for each other. You are not needed. No one needs a cop to heal. No one needs a cop to take care of the sick. Refuse the $900 donation for crime mapping and ArcGIS training from the William H. Parker Foundation. Refuse the bankrolling of data-driven militarized policing. Spy mapping doesn't prevent harm. It concentrates police presence, escalates conflict, and justifies further criminalization under the guise of analysis, just like a sweep. The sweeps are carried out like military operations and planned for with militarized tactics. Streets are mapped, probably with ArcGIS, zoned, targeted, and attacked. Sanitation thinly veils the weaponized program of racial and sexual cleansing you're attempting to carry out using surveillance maps funded by the William H. Parker Foundation and other war machine misanthropists. Be careful, because next we'll analyze you, and maybe next Thursday morning at 7:30 a.m. we'll come knocking on your doors and get you out of your house and make you drag your shit across the street while we requisition your illegal property and redistribute it according to public need. If you had any competence in your positions whatsoever, you would refuse all funding increases, refuse the $900 donation for crime mapping and ArcGIS training from the William H. Parker Foundation, and then instantly abolish yourselves, abolish the police, abolish the United States of abuse.
The next speaker, Grace.
Once again, this agenda makes one thing clear. This body does not oversee LAPD. You launder its violence. Let's start with the so-called delayed interviews program for categorical use of force cases. Giving officers up to 72 hours before they're interviewed is not about fairness or accuracy. It is about coordination. It is about giving cops time to huddle with each other, align stories, consult lawyers and union reps, and rehearse justification. This pilot was introduced in April, and now you're here to brag about its success. Successful at what? At protecting officers who brutalize people? At consolidating narrative control? Because that is exactly what this policy does. Policing is not just about violence, it is about controlling the story after the violence. And you're endorsing that strategy outright. Then there's the $12,000 donation for the FBI Executive Development Training. Let's stop pretending this is neutral leadership development. This is an export of federal policing ideology, surveillance, counterinsurgency, and repression. This is how LAPD stays seamlessly integrated with ICE, the FBI, and the broader federal policing apparatus, while pretending there is no collaboration. This commission keeps approving the quiet federalization of LAPD and then acting surprised when local harm mirrors national repression. And LAPD wants to present itself today as a protector against hate under AB 449. That is disgusting. This department has a long record of anti-Black, anti-immigrant, anti-trans, and anti-unhoused violence. Expanding hate crime reporting under LAPD does not protect communities. It expands police contact and data collection, which is designed to harm the very people targeted. Hate cannot be policed by an institution built on white supremacy and racial capitalism. And we need to be very clear about what all of this produces. A 69% increase in officer-involved shootings compared to the same time last year, from 26 to 44 shootings. That is not an accident, that is not a trend, that is a result. This violence is manufactured through data-driven policing, predictive analytics, and programs cynically branded as data-informed, community-focused policing. These systems flood Black and poor neighborhoods with cops, escalate contact, and treat human beings as risk scores and heat maps. When you concentrate police, you manufacture confrontation. When you intensify surveillance, you manufacture state violence. And when the killings spike, this commission pretends it's shocked, even as you continue approving the very programs that guarantee more bloodshed. None of these items stand alone. Together they reveal the same project: more surveillance, more secrecy, more coordination after violence, and more legitimacy for a department that keeps killing and criminalizing our communities. You're not regulating LAPD. You're enabling and bankrolling it.
Madam Chair, we're at 45 minutes and we have 5 callers left. How would you like to proceed?
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We'll hear from a couple more folks.
Okay. The next speaker, Hamed Khan.
Lot of items today on the agenda, but it's interesting that how Russia was responding to the 69% rise in officer-involved shooting, which comes, what about 44, 45, almost once a week this year. This has been officer-involved shootings, meaning that somebody would have been killed or shot, dead. But the only thing Russia had to say was there are hundreds of instances every day of edged weapons and this, that, and the other. Well, how many of those 100 fucking instances do we get to hear? Right. I mean, just like, where somebody has to be shot. And as Grace was saying, it's very much rooted, and this is the shit that we exposed 6 years ago through your predictive policing programs. You had the anchor points, you had the laser zones, you had the city mapped out as target areas, as kill zones. All of South Central Los Angeles, the east side. This is exactly what the playbook is in data-informed, community-focused policing. When you unpack ACCICs, when you look at the NEAs and the whole goddamn SARA project, laser was a part of the SARA project. This is how targeted hunting happens. This is why people are getting shot. This is why Grishario Mack, who was having a mental health condition, was shot so many times in Crenshaw Mall. Because Crenshaw Mall was a goddamn laser zone. This is what happened to Nipsey Hussle's business as well, because his business was determined an anchor point. These are all places that are determined as crime triggers. So people go in guns blazing. And then on top of that, you have this bullshit, just pseudoscientific thing from USC going on around Everyday Respect Project. Well, how do you have fucking everyday respect? Right? When USC's own law professor, Jody Armour, he so aptly puts this, and he calls cops as violence workers. As violence workers. So that's the gentleman who was there who lost his son. That's the kind of fucking everyday respect that you have. Shoot first, talk later. And they keep on giving more money. They keep on giving more money to this pseudoscientific and this academic complicity and these partnerships just to garnish this thing. That we are looking at all of these body camera videos, that we are looking at all of these tapes, and we're looking, and what is going on with that, right? Well, Axon claims that they are looking at body camera videos, and so they can predict moods. That's the kind of pseudoscientific bullshit that we are looking into this thing. Rather than addressing the real issue, and looking at how vulnerability factors constantly face our communities every day, every second, every minute. More money, another $4 million gone. Well, what about the $389 million since 2020 that's been paid out by the city just for LAPD's liabilities? Harassment, civil rights violations, misconduct, beatings. What about the pay raises that the cops have been getting? But it keeps on bleeding the city's resources. It's like a crocodile. Keep that mouth open and just keep on sucking up all the resources.
Charmaine Elizabeth Johnson.
Ma'am, you've had an opportunity to speak.
Yes, my name's Charmaine Elizabeth Johnson. I came to the meeting about 2 weeks ago. 2 officers took police report, Leon Chaz and officer number 42406 and officer number 44357. They were for attempted murder with involvement of the FBI and police. The police have actually retained my business plans in 2020. They are laundering my businesses with them business plans. And in lieu of that, I'm being murdered with chemicals put in my consumables. They're indicating putting them chemicals in my consumables in the police station. Yesterday, I went to the police station to actually make another report for being injected on the streets. And there was an orchestrated theatrical scene that was played with people that were coming into the police station saying that there was a dreadlocks man that came in and said that we don't have lost property, meaning basically that we don't have your property that we retained in 2020, which you're using to launder my businesses with, and indicating it throughout Skid Row. It's like a circus. There's several events which have happened, and I've called the police. The police are, as I said, aiding and abetting. They have my sister, Paulette Johnson, who they have brought from the UK using my passport, and they have her laundering my business throughout America and throughout Los Angeles and California. And they're aiding and abetting with that crime. My hair's been cut on the street to negate the attempted murder that is happening with the food that are adulterated in the actual mission throughout Skid Row. They cut my feet, they sliced my feet to prevent me from fleeing, because I've been trying to flee Los Angeles because of the attempted murder that I'm facing here. And when I went to the hospital, I asked them to call the police, and the police never arrived. They never showed up. I just left the hospital and, with, minor care, and that was it. Everything was done under camera. They went inside my vagina under camera also to get a USB. The camera was removed from, it was a wedding chapel on Broadway. The camera was removed following to hide the evidence. There's been phone thefts. I've been chased.
Ma'am, your time is up, but there will be someone here that you can speak with if you want to do a complaint.
Next speaker, Gina Viola. My apologies, I skipped over that one.
So, who keeps the city safe from you? That's my question. Why would victims even come and report anything to you? Cory Poca will face no repercussions for tipping off a rapist when the rape victim came forward to LAPD to report a crime. That's what this department is about. Who is keeping the city safe from this? I want to talk about this commission. I want to talk about why you're all each on this commission. One of you is now running for office on a platform of crime, right? Increasing crime, increasing filth in our city. After sitting on this commission for years, doing nothing to prevent the fact that LAPD shootings are up 69%. Almost the same amount that shootings across the city are down. You said shootings are down 76%. LAPD shootings are up 69%. Who keeps the city safe from you? Who? Another one of you is the proud host of a podcast on democracy. Liberty Hill, Shane Murphy Goldsmith, 4 seasons now of a podcast on democracy. After sitting here at this desk for years, doing nothing to prevent the fact that LAPD has killed 44 people's children this year. You heard from one of those parents today. 44 sets of parents lost their children this year due to the likes of this police commission. Who keeps the city safe from you? Another one of you was appointed the rebuilding czar after our city burned to the ground. Right? That's what Karen Bass did. She appointed Steve Sobroff to be the rebuilding czar after he sat here for a decade, more than a decade, gentrifying this city. Each and every one of you, as you go on your holiday break, ask yourself, why are you here? What are you doing? Are you going to make something different? Another one of you, after sitting on this desk for years, not saying a word, we dubbed her the silent one, was just honored earlier this year in City Hall for her work here at the desk, where she asked one question the entire time she was on this commission. You don't think we know that this is scripted? That this is a clown show? You open up the meeting reading from the same list every week. Meanwhile, Grieving people are suffering at the hands of the oppression, of the all of it. The laser zones that Hamid talked about earlier, all of this. You send your officers out and tell them where to go shoot and kill. That's exactly what you do. And each and every one of you sitting at this desk are just waiting for your next, what's it going to be? Run for city council, be a podcast leader, be a
Thank you. Your time's up. Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Aiden.
What's up, people? Pigs. Some of the commission, I notice the person from the office of the Inspector General isn't here. I don't know who you are. The chief isn't here. The president isn't here. I talk about this every week. You fucks do not do your jobs. You hardly even have this fucking meeting. And when we do have this meeting, people like Rasha are sitting there, not even fucking paying attention to the last 5 speakers. You know, when Teresa's here, she's not listening to people, but she is looking like a hawk out into the crowd to see if there might be a child laughing or a person smiling, because this farce is all so fucking funny to us. And there's really no other way to respond except to laugh, because if you didn't laugh, you'd have to cry. You know, you see Django Shibley chugging his water, never saying a fucking word. You see all these commissioners dancing out their choreography of, you know, oh yes, well, you know, chief, is there, what are we gonna find out about this? And the chief will say, oh, there will be an investigation. Those investigations have never borne fruit. Those investigations have never been reported back to this room. And those investigations, you have to think, probably are not really happening to the degree that it's indicated in this meeting that they are. And that brings us to the question of legitimacy, which Hamid raised about a month ago. And that word has been echoing in my head every time I come to one of these meetings, legitimacy. Why are the police so violent? Why are the police killing people? Why are the police judge, jury, and executioner? Why do the police shoot to kill all the time? Why is there no accountability? And the reason is because the police do not have legitimacy. No one fucking wants to work for the LAPD because you do not have legitimacy. If Jonathan Foster earlier said, oh yeah, you know, if each cop got one person to come in and be a cop, we wouldn't have a hiring shortage. Well, I guess that's not possible. I guess no one wants to be a fucking cop because everyone knows you're corrupt. Why would you want to be a cop when every time you see a fucking cop, they're harassing someone, they're arresting someone, they're shooting someone, they're being racist, they're openly laughing about the violence that they inflict upon the citizens of this city? It is a fucking embarrassment that you exist. Abolish the police. You know, next year, the numbers will continue to go up. This year, officer-involved shootings increased by 69%. And do you know what they increased by last year or the year before that? Every time we hear one of these statistics, when it's something that reflects negatively on the police, there are tons of excuses. Oh, you know, well, this happened and people are being so much more violent this year, and we've been escalating the charges that we give to them to sanitize and justify our violence. Well, next year, those numbers will continue to increase. And do you know why, Dominic? Because there is no fucking accountability. People shoot people. People just shoot to kill for no fucking reason. Shoot anything that moves. If you cared more about people dying, you would not be doing what you're doing. Jeff, you want to sell some more fucking cars? Maybe you can find somewhere in the budget if people...
Next speaker, please.
The next speaker, Mary. Mary? Okay.
Hi. So, because the LAPD is doing absolutely zero for me, so I presented my letter to the OIG, the Office of Investigation Inspector General, and a detailed account of ongoing harassment, abuse, stalking, and police misconduct that I have been experiencing since 2017 myself, despite repeated attempts to address these issues through various channels, including local police department and legal processes. I have faced significant obstruction, deception, and constant neglect. My case involves systemic abuse, corruption, and betrayal by multiple individuals within law enforcement. And I request immediate and thorough investigation in this matters. But I hear that you do not investigate, so I don't know what to do. Maybe I have to ask God to help me. Anyway, given the severity of my situation and the clear evidence of systemic abuse and corruption, I respectfully request the following: immediate investigation in my situation, a thorough independent investigation into the action of the officers and detectives involved in my case, several, and other officers who have obstructed and delayed my reports. I request too oversight by federal authorities. Given the apparent complicity with local law enforcement, I request that this case be referred to federal oversight agencies such as the FBI and the Department of Justice for investigation into possible corruption, police misconduct, and violation of my civil rights. I request protection and support. I request immediate protective measure to ensure my safety. I call 911 and they do not respond. So this morning I was assaulted again by the people where I'm living with. But the abusers, they corrupt, bribe, and threaten. So they forced them to harass me. And so I was harassed before coming here. And right now, the hacker who is involved in this situation, which the LAPD know all about it, but they pretend that they do not know anything about it. They want my evidence, which you already have. So I request protection and ongoing threats to my life and well-being. I also seek support in preserving and securing my personal property, including my phone and documents, which have been continuously targeted by the hacker. So, and I request public accountability. I request that my case be brought.
Thank you, ma'am. Your time's up. Is there someone from the Inspector General's office that can?
Yes, ma'am, if you just want to meet someone from my office, I'll be able to speak with you. Thank you.
The next speaker is Gina Goetz.
I'm here today because I need help. I have been a victim of identity theft, fraud, forgery, loan fraud, mortgage fraud, arson, larceny, abuse by the court, family court, where my kids were taken away from me. Though the commissioner stated there is no domestic violence or child abuse, as there was none. In 3 years, not one of my witnesses have been heard. This is because my ex, John Mansfield of Aries Management, is powerful enough to make sure that I don't get any justice, not in the courthouse, not through the police. My sister, unfortunately, Tina Gotts, who has allowed herself to steal, along other people, $400 million from 400 people at Oxford Gold in Beverly Hills. Now, they have gotten away with murder. They continue to abuse me by emptying my bank accounts. Then when I go to Wells Fargo and say, how did my sister add herself as POD? My sister tells me, don't worry, we are protected. And that's what's happening. My sister is being an imposter on me in family court. She was in family court at the same time. She stipulated for me to be heard by Commissioner Doreen Boxer the same week she was being heard. Now, I've gone to the police, showed them hundreds of thousands of dollars gone from my bank account just in the last 6 months, almost $1 million. And what do? They tell me to leave. My sister, again, in family court, acted as she's me because they have the contract for Superior Court of California Technology. So she files as she's me. She attended court as she's me. She had me miss court, stealing my mail, doing wire fraud, embezzlement, I go to the police station, they treat me as if I'm a cuckoo for Cuckoo Puffs. My phone has been taken over. I'm a victim of being spoofed. I'm a victim of false DUI and sent to the mental health care court for no reason other than some imposter acting as me. They even cook data. The medical record says no drugs, no alcohol,
Thank you,
192.
ma'am. Your time is up, but thank you. And if someone can please have a, ma'am, someone will talk to you. And we have the last, ma'am. Ma'am, thank you.
And
We'll
the
have
la-
the last speaker.
The last speaker, Jimbo Robert Lee Perry.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm listening to people, and I have empathy with everyone here. That's what I want to say. And I don't know your job description. I'm a novice with the police commission, but just listening to the audience, everyone has issues and problems. And I hope that the police commission are implementing their job description. And I believe if the police commission is implementing their job description, that's a good thing. And if the police commission is not implementing their job description, there should be a process for replacement because we live in a democratic society. That's what I want to say. One of the issues I have, anyway, I just want you to know I'm pro law enforcement. I'm not anti law enforcement. Pro law enforcement is a good thing because they assist and help people to be safe. Within every organization, I think that things are not perfect. But if things are not perfect, if your job is to make it perfect, I hope you have a timeline to accomplish it. That's what I want to say. And thank you very much.
Thank you. That will complete the public comment portion of the agenda, and we will take a short recess. Okay, we are back, and we'll now move to item number 3 on the agenda. Do any of the commissioners have any questions about items 3A through 3L or 3N? Any questions? No? Commissioner Scobin?
Yeah, 3B
3B?
and, yeah, 3B.
We will pull item 3B for discussion purposes, and I will move that we approve items 3A through 3L and 3N, except for 3B, and take the recommended board action. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Just to clarify,
Oh.
3M's pulled, right?
M is not there. Yep.
Aye.
Aye, perfect. Thank you. The motion passes. Yes, 3M has been moved to a future date. So now we will call item 3B. And this is the department's report relating to a request for proposals for security guard services. May you please state your appearances?
Good morning. My name is Amira Eppolito. I am the captain of Security Services Division, and I also have James Carlin. He is in charge of contracts.
Wonderful, thank you.
Good morning.
And Commissioner Scobin?
So a couple questions. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Out of curiosity, what role does the commission play? I recognize this is about putting out an RFP. What role does, if any, does the commission play once potential companies have been identified?
So it's the RFP process is extensive. What role do you play?
Yeah, like the RFP goes out, companies are going to fill out the RFP, we receive RFPs. Before the department makes a decision on who we're going to contract with, what role, if any, does the commission play in that?
Well, my understanding, the commission does not play an active role in the process of receiving the applications or answering questions as we go through the RFP. But the commission will have a chance to approve the recommended selected contractors.
Great, thank you. One question / comment I have when we get to that point is, I recognize that there's, oftentimes in security companies, ex-LAPD officers that either own those companies or have senior positions within those companies. I would just hope that when this comes back to us, that information is disclosed with enough time to do a little bit of due diligence and understand that.
Okay.
We have quite a vetting process for the companies and the principal members of each company, so we will be able to find that out and disclose it.
Thank you very much.
Is that all?
That's it.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Scobin, I think the commission, in order to not have to recuse ourselves from being able to vote on a contract, we can't get involved in the RFP process itself. And so that's helpful, hopefully, but I do think raising issues that you want to make sure is addressed during the RFP process is helpful. Did you have any? No. Okay. So with that, I move that that we approve item 3B and take the recommended board action. Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we will move to item number 4 on the agenda, regular agenda items. And we will start item 4A, the verbal presentation for the University of Southern California's Everyday Respect Project.
Okay, good morning, Commissioners. I will just do a quick introduction, just as a bit of background. And so my name is Captain Shannon White. I'm the Commanding Officer for Strategic Planning and Policies Division. I'm here today and joined by Dr. Benjamin Graham from the USC Everyday Respect Project. I understand that we've had several presentations in the past, but for the benefit of Commissioner Scobin, who wasn't present for those, and then also members of the public, I did want to share that this study that we're going through is intended to look at our interactions during traffic stops. So it's a multi-year, multi-phase project that was looking at what is good communication versus bad communication during traffic stops, how those types of communication impact the outcomes of the stop, and as well as the overall impact on community sentiment towards officers and the LAPD. Our goal at the end of this is to have actionable, tangible guidance on how we can change our training and improve officer communication and enhance de-escalation. I do want to note, and I believe Dr. Graham will agree, that we are not at a point yet with the data to be able to broadly amend our training. This, again, is multiple phases, and so we are still probably about halfway through. But we look forward to continuing the partnership so that we are able to draw something from these results that leads to actionable change within the department. So with that said, I will turn it over to Dr. Graham for his presentation for the conclusion of this phase of his research.
All right. Well, no, thank you all very much for having me here. Thank you, Captain White. So my name is Ben Graham. I'm a professor at USC, and I'm here representing a research team that's spread across 4 universities. We have computer scientists, signal analysis engineers, data scientists, sociologists, psychologists, public policy scholars, and political scientists like myself. So we're conducting this work in fulfillment of a professional services agreement between the LAPD and our team, in which we committed to analyze body-worn camera footage of LAPD traffic stops and present the results of the research to the Commission. Today I'm presenting a first set of descriptive results from body-worn camera videos that we've hand-coded. So thanks to the folks at LAPD who have worked really hard over the last few years to make this happen. Facilitating researcher access to sensitive data is not easy. And thanks to our funders, the majority of our funding comes from the National Science Foundation, but we also have funding from Arnold Ventures, Microsoft Justice Reform Initiative, Google, and the USC Zumberg Initiative. So as promised in the professional services agreement, these are a first set of descriptive results evaluating communication between officers and drivers during traffic stops. In particular, I'm presenting analysis across 1,000 stops of how these interactions vary across drivers of different races and wealth levels and between stops with and without searches. The data we have give us insight into aspects of officer-driver interactions that we previously couldn't observe, not at scale, not to be able to see the broad patterns and the big picture, right? So how scared or angry was the driver at the outset of the stop? And did they become more or less scared or angry as the stop progressed? Did the officer follow all the tenets of procedural justice? Did they explain the reason for the stop? Did they give the driver an opportunity to explain themselves, et cetera? The most straightforward use of this data is the type of analysis that I'll present today that gives us a better picture of how these interactions are going. That enables transparency, accountability, allows us to see what's working well, what isn't. But I want to pitch two other things that high-quality data enable. The first is that this data allows us to recognize and reward types of excellence that we couldn't observe before, especially excellence in de-escalation. Right now we have ways, they're not great ways, but we have ways to identify unnecessary escalation, right? Civilian complaints, high-frequency use of force. But we usually have no way of identifying when officers succeed in entering an interaction with an angry, scared, potentially violent individual and successfully steering that interaction to a safe, calm conclusion. All that looks like in the current data is a routine traffic stop and somebody got a ticket. Right? So when we can identify excellence in de-escalation, it can change how we reward, how we promote, who becomes a training officer, that sort of thing. And then second is that better data means better coaching. This is what Captain White was getting to, where large-scale data is valuable when it allows us to overturn mistaken intuition. Big data is why NBA teams shoot more three-pointers than they used to. It's why NFL coaches go for it on fourth down, even when it feels like they shouldn't. Right? If trainers and supervisors can show officers that when you explain the reason for the stop early on, or when you give the driver some time to explain their side of the story, then drivers are less likely to escalate or make complaints, then they have something powerful, right? They can identify techniques that work, and they can objectively show that they work. They can get buy-in from officers, and they can actually change how officers are acting in the field. So that's where we're going with this project. Now let's talk about the data. So our team began this project by studying community and LAPD perspectives on good communication. We surveyed 2,000 Angelenos, did more than 60 in-depth interviews, including both police officers and community members. We held focus groups with community organizations and LAPD officers. We reviewed training and policy materials, attended traffic stop training at the academy, participated in ride-alongs. Right? And I presented the results of this stakeholder research a little bit over a year ago. But the thing I'll resurface today is the importance of respect. Right? This showed up in our conversations with officers, with community members, with every stakeholder group we talked to. So respect is a broadly shared value in Los Angeles, and we devote a lot of time to it in the study. Oops, okay. I work this clicker really well. So our human annotation work was completed by 42 annotators working a total of 13,000 hours watching body-worn camera videos and recording detailed information about what happens during those stops. So this work took place from March 2024 to August 2025. Our annotators included people from a range of different backgrounds, former law enforcement officers, individuals with a history of past arrest, folks from a range of different neighborhoods, ages, races, professional backgrounds, and we spent a lot of time training them. Today's presentation only covers analysis of human annotation data, so I won't be presenting any output from AI models today, but our team is working to use this annotation data to train those models. And with the AI models, we can analyze a much larger set of stops. So we currently have access to videos from a stratified random sample of 30,000 stops. So we'll use our AI tools to study that larger set. And this is extremely valuable for studying rare events like escalation to violence that aren't common enough in 1,000 stops to really be able to analyze in detail. The tools we develop will be released open source, right? And our team's prepared to advise LAPD in implementing those tools if they decide they would like to. Okay. So our research team has analyzed a sample consisting of 1,745 body-worn camera recordings from a stratified random sample of 1,000 traffic stops conducted by LAPD officers between September 2021 and August 2022. So the sample consists of 500 stops in which officers reported conducting a search and 500 stops in which they did not. So we oversampled stops with searches because these stops tend to involve investigation of more serious crimes and thus are more likely to include a risk of escalation or use of force. So in this talk, I'll present quite a few results where we look separately at what happens in stops with searches and stops without, because fundamentally these tend to be quite different types of interactions. Because the recordings that we analyze are from a stratified random sample, we can infer that what's true of each of these two groups of stops is, on average, true of all the stops that LAPD conducted during this 12-month period, stops with searches and stops without. Okay. So in the first step of our annotation work, we ensure there's a perfect transcript. Who said what when? And then in the second step, we identify who all the participants in the interaction are, the primary officer, additional officers, driver, passengers, bystanders. And for the main participants, we also have the annotator record their perceived characteristics, their age, their race, their gender, etc. We measure the background characteristics of the stop and all the key elements of action and communication. Things like whether the officer explains the reason for the stop or asks the driver to keep their hands on the wheel, whether the driver complies with various directions, whether a search is conducted, all those sorts of things. We annotate things that we believe are highly subjective, like respect or anger or fear. For these items, we have multiple people evaluate the same video so that we can study when and why people agree and disagree. Our position is that a lot of things that matter most in human interaction are subjective. And so we're digging into the hard work of measuring these features, even though they are subjective. Anger and fear, quite subjective, but important to study. What sorts of actions by officers cause drivers to get more or less angry or fearful over time? Escalation to violence is quite rare, but anger and fear are more common. And learning more about how to diffuse and calm situations and bring stops not just to a nonviolent conclusion, but to a calm or even positive conclusion, that's the type of analysis that this data makes possible. So our goal here is to describe patterns across 1,000 randomly selected stops, not to evaluate the appropriateness of officer behavior in any single stop, right? Or even to evaluate whether the overall performance of LAPD officers across the sample is good or bad. Our job is to measure what happens and doesn't happen during stops and to describe the patterns in that data. In what types of stops do certain things occur? What sorts of actions tend to precede what sorts of outcomes? What to do with those findings, what they imply for training and policy. Those are conversations our research team can inform, but they're not decisions that we as researchers should be the ones to make. So our job is to provide the data and allow others to make those decisions better. Body-worn camera videos are limited, right? Things happen before the camera's turned on and outside the field of view. So our annotators always have a not obvious from video option, and they use it quite a bit. So humility about what we can know and what we can't know is an important part of getting this research right. And then my last note, I'm going to talk today about how different aspects of officer and driver behavior vary across stops. Stops of drivers with different characteristics, especially perceived race and perceived economic condition. And it's important to talk about how we measure those things. Our measures of driver characteristics are based on annotators' perceptions. So things like the driver's race are measured with error. Same thing with the driver's wealth. This is based on what annotators can perceive from the video, their clothes, etc. So we're measuring whether somebody appears wealthy. And I want to emphasize that something we're not doing is asking an annotator to evaluate somebody's race or wealth and then proceeding to ask them about respect or about legitimacy. We do these two types of annotations totally separately. So the assessments of of annotator characteristics and then what's actually happening during the stop are done by different people on different days. So we're not priming someone to think about race and then asking them about respect or legitimacy. So when we talk about how interactions vary depending on the race of the driver, it's important to understand how frequently drivers of different races show up in our data. Right? Remember, this is a stratified random sample of 1,000 stops. So we have 500 stops with searches, 500 stops without. And in this table, you can see that about half the drivers in the sample are perceived to be Hispanic. In stops with searches, black drivers are overrepresented, and white and Asian drivers are underrepresented. So we measure whether officers ask questions or make statements that imply that a driver is not that they don't belong in the neighborhood where they're pulled over. And we do this because these questions and statements are a central concern of community stakeholders. During our interviews and focus groups, we found that people really don't like being asked questions that imply they aren't where they belong or that they may have committed a crime more serious than the infraction for which they were pulled over. At the same time, investigation of serious crimes is an important objective during some stops. When officers suspect that a person may have been involved in or may have information about a crime, they're trained to ask these questions as part of the investigative process. One concern that we heard from community members was a belief that non-white drivers are asked these questions more frequently than white drivers. What we find is that among drivers who are stopped, right, the rates across races are quite similar. We see that these driver out-of-place questions and statements occur in about 7% of stops overall, just a little under that, and the distribution by driver race is quite equal. We estimate it's slightly more common in stops of white drivers, but this difference is not statistically significant. Now I'm going to talk about verbal attacks and insults by officers and by drivers. In a minute, I'll talk about our overall measures of respect, but I want to start with something a little more concrete. Whether or not in the course of a stop, an officer verbally attacks or insults a driver or a passenger, and whether a driver or a passenger verbally attacks or insults an officer. So this is important both because the absence of verbal attacks and insults is fundamental to respect, but also because during our interview research, officers often mention to us how much verbal abuse they're subjected to during their work. So it's important to measure this both in terms of officer behavior, but also in terms of driver behavior. I'll note that we also coded for the presence of even more serious verbal events, the use of hate speech by officers, and I can report that across these 1,000 stops, we found 0 confirmed events of hate speech by officers. So we look first here at verbal attacks or insults by officers, and we see that this occurs in a little over 1% of stops with searches, so it's quite rare in routine traffic stops, right? It's somewhat more common, about 4.5% of stops with searches, so more common in more serious stops. And if we look at the flip side, verbal attacks and insults by drivers and passengers, right? This also happens more in stops with searches. It's less common in stops without searches. And if we compare across these two slides, we see that drivers insulting or verbally attacking officers is about twice as common as vice versa. Now we compare stops of white drivers and stops of non-white drivers, and we find that insults or verbal attacks by officers are slightly more common in stops of white drivers than stops of non-white drivers, though this difference is not statistically significant. And the results are similar if we look at insults or verbal attacks by drivers and passengers. They occur slightly more often in stops of white drivers, though again, this difference is not statistically significant. One thing that we do have in our data, but we haven't yet had a chance to analyze, we just wrapped up these annotations in late August, and we've been digging the analysis since, is that we have timestamps on every single event, right, when it occurs during this stop. So we can identify essentially, like in this case, who insulted whom first, right, and we can study how these things escalate and how they de-escalate. And so I think these results start to show the power of what we should be able to do in this project. Right? Administrative data, it can tell us which stops involve the use of physical force or not, but sometimes we get angry rhetoric that escalates to violence, and sometimes angry rhetoric that then gets successfully de-escalated, right? So we can study how this escalation happens and what allows some officers to be particularly effective at de-escalation. That's a place where we really hope we're able to provide some value to the LAPD and to the community as this research proceeds. So now I want to talk about a relatively straightforward element of procedural justice. This is something LAPD officers are trained to do in every stop, which is to explain to the driver why they were stopped. I'll also note that going forward, this is one of the areas where we expect our AI models will perform really well, that this is something the models should be able to identify quite cleanly. So this is an area where we can deliver tools to LAPD where they can measure in near real time, if they want to, whether this is happening in every stop their officers conduct. Right? So here again, we divide between stops with searches and stops without searches. Officers explain the reason for the stop in a little less than 90% of stops without a search and a little less than 80% of stops with searches. So the overall levels are pretty high here, but lower in stops with searches. And if the department's interested, we'd be happy to dive a little deeper here into when these explanations aren't getting made, why is that? Is there a reason for these omissions that the department's comfortable with? Or are these situations where they really want these officers making the explanation? Maybe there are tactical adjustments that can give officers the time and space to do that, or whatever the case may be. So I think this is a place where we can go deeper. So now I'm going to turn to this comprehensive, more fully subjective measure of respect. This is a key element of procedural justice. It's central to community and officer views on good policing, and it's prominent in LAPD policy and training. So we ask annotators to assess on a simple 5-point scale how respectful each person's behavior is during a stop. This first figure kind of drives home why respect is so important. We show how one annotator's assessment of the level of respect shown by the officer predicts another annotator's measure of whether the stop constitutes legitimate policing. The dotted horizontal line is the average level of respect across all stops, and the takeaway here is that respect really matters. When officers are able to show high levels of respect during stops, annotators are more likely to perceive the conduct of the stop overall as legitimate. All right. And here we're comparing ratings of officers' respect in stops with searches and stops without searches. What we see is that annotators tend to assess officers' behavior as less respectful in stops with searches. On the flip side, we also assess ratings of drivers' respectfulness in stops with searches and without, and we see that drivers are also less respectful in stops with searches. So these things mirror each other. Here we examine how officers' level of respect varies with the perceived race of the driver, looking first at stops without searches. Recall that the annotator who assesses the race of the driver is a different person than the annotator who later assesses the level of respect shown by each person in the stop. And what we see in this figure is that there's no statistically significant difference in how annotators perceive officer respect between stops where drivers were white versus non-white. But we do see that black drivers are treated with more respect than Hispanic drivers. Now we conduct the same analysis, but in stops with searches. Here we don't have any statistically significant differences across race. Note that the confidence interval is very wide for our estimate of the level of respect for white drivers, because very few white drivers are searched, so we just have a very small sample size here. Now we look at how respect varies according to perceived driver wealth. Right? Perceived driver wealth is tricky, right? This is measured with a fair amount of error because this is just annotator perceptions based on what they can see from the video. And we start by looking at stops without searches. What we see is that the level of respect shown by officers is higher in stops of drivers who appear to be wealthier. And again, recall that the annotator estimating the driver's wealth is different than the annotator assessing respect by the officer. Here we look at the same analysis in stops with searches. Right? In these stops, we see no relationship between perceived driver wealth and the level of respect shown by officers. So throughout this winter and spring, our team will continue to be hard at work on the AI modeling portion of this project. We'll be using this human annotation data that I've just shown you to train those models. With the models, we can analyze a much larger number of stops. We can start to do analyses that predict rarer events like escalation to violence. And we'll also be digging deeper into the causes of escalation and de-escalation in general, using the timestamps in our data to look at how these stops unfold over time. So the 3 big goals in this next arc are to develop AI tools that can identify officer excellence and de-escalation so that this behavior can be recognized and rewarded, Second is to analyze key cause and effect relationships to see if we can identify patterns in the data that overturn or at least complement what we already think we know about what works in officer communication. We want to bring in the big data and help LAPD trainers and supervisors be better coaches. And third, we want to continue to build out the detail in this picture of what is and isn't going well in these interactions and provide transparency to the board, to city government, to the public about how these officer-driver interactions are going. And the biggest note I want to end on here is that our team is available. We want to know what analyses, what AI tools are most valuable to the LAPD, to the commission, to community stakeholders. If there are things that the board or the mayor's office or an NGO wants to know, please send me an email. We want to do the analysis that best informs the work of the people who are working to make policing better. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Anything else, Captain White, before I turn it over?
No, so we're both available for questions, whether it's for the research or the implementation within the department.
Wonderful, thank you. I'll start with Commissioner Garcia if you have any questions.
No actual questions, but thank you for the presentation. I remember the first phase or the first presentation, and really excited to see this being implemented and us using AI to be able to capture, to your point, all those things that we currently aren't capturing in reports. And I think that's key to then help us develop policy training and moving forward, not only on the law enforcement side, but also providing information and education to the public so that hopefully we can see better interactions and more of those good stops versus other. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Scobin.
Yeah, thank you again. It's my first part of the presentation. A couple questions. When you look at body-worn cameras, are you looking at stops citywide?
Yeah, so we start with with all the stops that LAPD completed during a 12-month period. And then we split it up by stops with and without searches, split it up by month, and then we take that stratified random sample. So this is representative across all of LAPD stops.
So the sample size, though, is representative across. Okay, cool.
That's right.
Have you identified any difference between stops by patrol officers as opposed to traffic or motorcycle?
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's not as cleanly identified in the data as we would like. Actually, some of the best identification there is whether the officer is on a motorcycle or not, right? Isn't a perfect distinction there. And these things are quite different, but we haven't split it out that way in the analysis in detail yet.
Have any of the stops that you evaluated resulted in a use of force, whether categorical or non?
Yes. So because we oversampled on stops with searches, right, it's most of the time when somebody's vehicle is searched, they're out of the vehicle. It's not too uncommon for people to be in handcuffs, right? So that's actually fairly common in the data that we look at because we oversampled on stops with searches.
And you had mentioned the AI model that you're building out, which to me is really the game changer in this potentially being a tool, for the department to use kind of in real time for training in individual situations. Do you have any idea of what timing looks like on that?
So we are training models right now to do some things, especially around stop summarization. I would expect we've got some pretty interesting models running by next summer where we're sort of ready to publish some results on those. Some of the simple summarization models we'll even be publishing this winter. And everything that we're doing is open source. So already up on Open Science Framework is all of our annotation manual. We built custom annotation software to facilitate this. That's been released open source. So as we put this stuff out, that it'll all be going up publicly.
Great, thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. And I had a few questions. One, again, thank you for the report. And as I told you at the last one, I can listen to you all day long. So I want to take some of your classes. But very interested in knowing, and maybe Captain White, have you given any thought of how to operationalize the aspect of kind of recognizing excellence? Like, is there a way to tag certain interactions that are good demonstratives of de-escalation that can be used either at training, a little certificate that goes, you know, a little commendation for the officers to recognize that positive, good interaction.
Yes, so we currently have a policy that allows for us to use our body-worn video for training, but it requires that the officers also consent to it because we can be our toughest critics. And God bless our officers, they tend to just go out there and do the work and not present it and bring it forward as you should use this or recognize it, especially in the areas of de-escalation. So this is an opportunity, if this AI model is something that we're able to integrate into our regular operations, that would make that easier for us to be able to see and recognize on a supervisory side, because those are often taking place on a daily basis, but outside of our awareness.
And Dr. Graham, when did you get all of the kind of data that you were looking for as part of this research project in terms of the number of stops, randomly selected, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, you know, the data architecture is not what it could be, right? And I think, you know, and so some of that, I think the department has space to push Axon pretty hard on some better data architecture, and I could talk about that for a while. But, you know, so in order to go from data on a stop, and we say, okay, here's the automated field data report. We'd like to access any body-worn camera footage associated with this stop. The best automatic matching that we can do gets us about 70 to 75% of stops. We managed to get all but 3 of the stops in our initial sample, all but 27 of the stops in our initial sample, because there was an LAPD sergeant who went one at a time through the Axon interface to track down, over 200 kind of missing videos, right? So that matching should be easy, right? When the department says, here's a stop, we want to find the body worn for this stop, there's no reason for that not to work. And so we can talk more about how that might become possible.
And maybe those are conversations for the Axon partners to see if there's a way to facilitate that speeding up. And with regards to kind of like the conditions that you take into account, have you seen any differences in stops that occur during the day versus night? Because I could imagine there may be some additional concerns or considerations.
Yeah, I mean, there's different types of stops are getting conducted. The frequency of different stop types are pretty different. So we haven't, I don't have anything interesting to report on that, though.
Okay. But that is something that's being kind of analyzed.
Yeah, so that's something that we have the timestamps on everything, so we know kind of based on the time of day and the time of year, whether it's dark or not when the stop is taking place. And then obviously the video itself has that.
Yeah. And you also mentioned kind of like the timestamps being helpful to kind of identify both like who insulted whom first. I'd also be interested in knowing whether searches occurred pre or post insult. So was there an increase in searching happening after, an officer was insulted? That just may be a helpful thing for us to understand. And I would also welcome, the Inspector General's office to think about how areas of potential oversight here and from some of the results of like, are there audits that the Inspector General can also be doing kind of in tandem based on some of this? And I'm sorry, Lisa, I identified you earlier as Brian Buckner because I didn't see you sitting there. So thank you.
I will note on that we do have pretty detailed information on search permissions, sort of, how consent for searches was obtained is annotated in pretty in detail.
Wonderful, thank you. And we'll be looking forward to hearing more about the AI modeling that you're talking about. And thank you. Any other questions before we turn it over? Nope. Thank you so much for your time and look forward to our next presentation with you.
Thank you all.
We'll move on to item number 4B. Verbal presentation regarding the pilot program for delayed interviews and categorical use of force investigation updates. Why don't we do some introductions and we'll see what we can accomplish today.
Thank you so much. Hey, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Commissioner Shields, Commissioner Scobin, Commissioner Garcia, Chief Choi, this Assistant Inspector General, Ms. Ridditt, Mr. Sibley, Carlos de la Guerra, and of course, Ms. Munoz, Ms. Silva. My name is Billy Brockway. I'm the Deputy Chief in charge of Professional Standards Bureau. With me is Omar Bazulto. He's the Captain 3 over Force Investigation Division. And we are here to discuss the delayed interview for categorical use of force pilot program, which was started back in April of 2025 when we came to the commission to have a discussion about a 6-month pilot program, which concluded in October 23rd of 2025. I'm going to ask Omar to give a little bit of a brief overview of what we did back in April, what has happened over the last few months, and requests and steps moving forward. So with that, I will turn it to Omar.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, everyone. For more than 2 decades now, the department's policies governing interviews following a categorical use of force incident have remained consistent, originating from the federal consent decree. And while these long-standing policies and procedures have ensured structure and accountability, evolving technology such as body-worn video, digital in-car video, cell phones and social media, and the widespread availability of third-party video has led to a reshaping within the landscape of force investigations. These tools have modernized our ability to capture and preserve evidence, but have also increased the complexity and volume of information FID investigators must analyze. Recognizing the need to evolve investigative practices, this 6-month pilot program was initiated to explore the investigative benefits of allowing interviews with involved officers up to 72 hours after a categorical use of force incident. Overall, the trends for this pilot program are positive. However, this is a significant policy change that requires careful consideration and balance. As you know, policy development continues, and FID looks forward to continued engagement with our Inspector General's office and members of this commission in sharpening the policy language. We also wish for the policy to be well thought of for the long term. So therefore, we are respectfully requesting an extension of this pilot program until the department is ready to present a policy recommendation sometime in the new year. So with that, we are available for any questions.
I'll turn it over to my fellow commissioners, Commissioner Garcia.
No questions at this time.
Commissioner Scobin.
Yeah, out of curiosity, how long, under the pilot, how long after the officer-involved shooting occurs is the involved officers, or are the involved officers interviewed?
So it would be up to a 72-hour period. So the average, during the pilot program, the average time frame of an interview of an officer has been 59 hours. So it's within that 72-hour that we reconvene with that officer and conduct the interview.
So the fluctuation should only be from 0 to 72 hours. Would that
That's
be
correct, sir.
And have we been consistent with that?
It has been, that's why we identified that average of 59 hours. It's been consistent within that realm.
Thank you. Also, what measures or assurances have we implemented to ensure that the shooting officer, isn't speaking to anyone or, is being tainted in any way in that time frame?
It's a good question. And so integrity safeguards were central to this pilot. And so officers remain under strict orders not to discuss the incident except with legal counsel, employee representatives, mental health professionals, and any violation of this directive would result in disciplinary action, up into including termination. So we are very, very serious about that. Compliance was verified by FID investigators prior to reconvening for that interview. We double checked if they followed the order. And so given the abundance of video available in most categorical use of force cases, any attempt to distort the facts would be immediately apparent to investigators. All that to say is that safeguards were in effect And we continue to monitor those safeguards very, very carefully.
And to the extent you can say this, have there been any breaches of that?
There have been no breaches thus far, and we're thankful for that.
And was there, how was the 72 hours determined? And I'm curious if there's any analysis of, up to 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours to understand, is there any sweet spot for what we feel is, the most accurate?
Right. So 72 hours is about the industry standard. So the International Association of Chief of Police recommends a 72-hour period, and a lot of the research points to sleep cycles. And so that 72-hour period is usually the sweet spot for sleep cycles, 1 to 2 for an officer to have the composure to reconvene for such a serious interview. And so part of our pilot was doing outside research. We've spoken to dozens of police agencies, and I must say that the LAPD is atypical in our approach. Many agencies now have pivoted toward a delayed interview process where they allow at least 1 to 2 sleep cycles before they reconvene for an interview. So that's how we came to that 72-hour period.
Okay. And on my prior question about, making sure they're not talking to anybody, et cetera, I would assume we have measures in place other than asking the officer if they have or not to do our own diligence on that?
We do. We also created a admonishment form that the officer must sign before they leave the scene, before they are released from a categorical use of force scene. We created an acknowledgement form delineating the admonishment language that we've provided to them. They have to sign that. We keep that in the casebook. And so there's also a written verification that we keep in the casebook as well. So safeguards in place for us to kind of ensure that those guardrails remain in effect.
Okay. Yeah, just in closing, I 100% respect the job officers do and understand and can hopefully appreciate how difficult it is, especially in these situations. I also believe that our analysis and investigation into any one of these situations is of the utmost importance as it pertains to us being transparent and building community trust. So I appreciate the efforts and the information. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll reiterate what Commissioner Scobin just said about the importance of getting this right, and that's why, and I appreciated you saying that, this is a work in progress to ensure we find the right balance here, to make sure that to the extent we are going to make a change of a policy that has taken decades to get to really good, important resolutions, that we do so very thoughtfully, and so appreciated the pilot program, at least to look at whether or not this is an area that could be changed. And under the pilot program, it's very important to know kind of what Commissioner Scobin's talking about is the concern about potential collusion, right? And so the instances in which the pilot program authorized the delay in the interviews is really when the actions of both the officers, the subject, and kind of the situation was clearly captured on some type of video tape recordings. And so want to make sure that's very clear to everyone about what this pilot program is, right? It's not that, it's going to be just a he said, she said type of situation, but we're looking for instances in which really the body-worn cameras and the increase in technology has led to better information that would eliminate or significantly reduce the concern of collusion or getting the story straight type of situation. And so I'll look forward to seeing what the proposed policy is for the department. I'll note that for the pilot program, the conditions on which we authorize the pilot program were specified not only in the written policy that the department submitted on April 22nd, but also on the statements and modifications made by the board, which included the concurrence by the Inspector General's office, who is also going to be at the scene of every one of these officer-involved shootings, just to make sure that, hey, you know what, reasonable minds all agree that the videotape is sufficient that there is no concern about that type of collusion. So I'm comfortable having this proceed with the pilot program until you are able to come back with a more formalized policy by January, end of January. I'll put that, if that works. I don't believe this item is agendized for any formal action by the board. So how soon will you be able to come back to us with a proposed policy?
Commissioner Shields, we are looking for 90 days or the end of the first quarter or sooner to have a solid policy, some solid policy language hammered out. And we'd like to work with our IG counterparts and obviously this board and the executive director, policies and procedures to coordinate that. So, and the city attorney. So I think a good benchmark would be end of first quarter or sooner. I think January would be an aggressive date, but I think, probably February would be probably more appropriate.
Ma'am, we hear you loud and clear. We understand there's some things that we need to make sure that we're clear on and that we coordinate and communicate with all the entities that Omar just mentioned and make sure that's done right. So in the interim, I'm hoping that we have an opportunity to meet and discuss a little bit more about where we are as far as the steps are concerned and try to do this in a timely fashion where it's accurate the first time, if that makes sense.
Great. And so we will hopefully see you back here in February,
That's our goal.
approximately.
Well, that's our goal for sure.
Okay, thank you. Oh, we have one more question.
Just, no question, but just comments. And I hope this is something that'll be included in the more robust reporting, is the learning that has occurred by implementing this pilot approach, and not just around the recollection of memory, but around the officer wellness and long-term wellness of the officer, not just the short term. You mentioned the connection with the mental health expert, the ability to talk to that expert within that period, but also thinking about other factors in terms of how the interview is taking place, where the interview is taking place, what kind of room is it, and what are those steps to ensure that if it was a traumatic incident for the officer, that there is the appropriate help and support so that the officer isn't overwhelmed by trauma over a period of time and over a period of incidents, and that they have a healthy and long-lasting career.
Commissioner, we hear that, and behind us, you see the team, Dr. Dorian, obviously a major component of that. So we look forward to coming back in February to present all the findings, and in the meantime, update as we can with concrete information, and that we deliver it one time and make sure that it's accurate. But rest assured, this is a very holistic look at what we're doing, and it's very circular, where we're making sure that everything is taken care of and ensuring that we're making sure that everybody that needs to be in the room is there to discuss it and have input and equally weighted so that we make the right decisions and present to the commission for this, as you said, large policy change.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
We'll move on. Item 4C has been moved to another date, so we will move on to item 4D, the department's report relating to the basic car plan and department patrol plan.
Good morning. Commander Brian Lim, Office of Operations. I'm joined by Sergeant John Alipio. He's our officer in charge of our field deployment unit. So, as you know, this was a report requested by City Council, so we're available to answer any questions that you have.
Before we go to questions, can you just explain a little bit about exactly what this is, how you redo the numbers? I'll tell you, I've heard from some officers who morale is lower because they're getting a car less or something in one area or another. So this is obviously having a pretty big impact on the department. But can you talk a little bit about, like, why is there a need to update the plan, and how you try to do it as objectively as possible? Just a little bit about the process.
Take it.
Yes. Good morning. Sergeant Lipio, like my commander said. So, starting off with the objectivity of the situation. So it is, patrol plan is a concept, thank you, of three factors that go in, three interests that go into one item. One is the 25 factors of data as far as how many square miles of an area is, and then there are factors as far as about how many radio calls. There's 25 on page, they're listed out on page, starting on page 3. And then combine that with staffing factor, which is a calculation that determines how many personnel are needed to staff a car 7 days a week. So for example, if when we run the data, a given division is supposed to have 10 ACARs, we multiply that by the staffing factor calculated out for that 10-hour, 8-hour, or 12-hour shift, and that would give the actual personnel needed to staff that 7 days a week. That calculation takes into account planned, anticipated, and unanticipated days off, which will fluctuates yearly. And then this all is calculated each quarter. So the concept is the year is broken up into 4 quarters. The workload and crime types and location, volume, they change quarterly. So January to March will be different than what we see during the summertime during the heat, and then during the holidays are a little different. So each quarter, OO calculates what is needed in the 21 geographic areas to handle the patrol load at once, and then proposes whether to update, maintain, based on what personnel are available to operations for this. But maybe I should go back just a little bit. This only covers ACARs responding to radio calls. So officers that are actually in the ACAR or XCAR that's going to respond to the radio calls in each geographic area, that is what patrol plan is for. It does not cover any specialized supervision, anything vice, gang related. It doesn't cover any of that. So anything that is patrol, when we talk about patrol plan, is only those officers.
So in just kind of an impartial list, that he's referring to is like desk officers, kit room officers, our youth service officers, our CROW officers, our DART, our Teams 2 folks, subpoena control positions, our narcotics, our gangs, our foot beats, our school cars. So a lot of other positions are not factored into that.
And each of those positions are being done. So oftentimes, the biggest pool of officers that are available to do those other positions are patrol officers. So based on whatever situation, whether we need to advertise it to get it filled, or we don't have the correct, like say it's a position that's only authorized for a police officer 2, but we have a police officer 3 working it on loan, those pull from patrol. And so we are working through ensuring that proper rank and personnel are staffed appropriately in those authorized positions, which will help patrol have their true number and get the true feeling of where they sometimes feel like they are not having enough coverage. And that's the basic concept behind that.
Can I just add couple things, commissioners? Just so the patrol plan is supposed to be updated every quarter, and it informs operations of how many officers to deploy in what divisions, ACARs. The patrol plan prior to this had not been updated in several years. That's why this report is before you, because we've updated it and now we're pushing it to council.
Commissioners, if I may, sorry for my tardiness. I was going to say that, Chief Choi, thank you, that we had not updated the numbers since 2023. And I understand the concern of the officers and the perception that the algorithms have changed, and we have to consider two things. Since the community online reporting system has come into play, there's been over 130,000 reports taken online, which has an impact on that algorithm. Not only that, we have the unarmed response model. And year to date, the unarmed response model has allowed officers to not have to respond to some of those calls dealing with homelessness or mental evaluation units that takes more time out of the officers from being in a basic ACAR. So adding in the unarmed response model, the community online reporting, and then factoring in these algorithms, this is the workload and this is the numbers that we've come up with. So if, for instance, we say North Hollywood has 109 officers right now, but the algorithms and the workloads say they can meet their 100% patrol plan at 100, we're not taking those 9 officers away. With that plus 9, they could be deployed to the desk. We could actually maybe have another XCAR, a footbeat, a bicycle unit. So with this new 2026 first quarter numbers, some divisions are going to show a deficit, like Mission Division, but some divisions are going to show a positive number, and that allows our captains to have more leeway to deploy additional resources to focus on community engagement and outreach, and or have additional resources to walk foot beats or do an XCAR or work on something specific like a Sarah project.
Wonderful. Thank you for all of that additional information. And in the report, there was a recommendation that the department and the city issue a request for proposal to conduct a new basic car boundary study. Is that, what exactly would that kind of help tell us? Do we know?
So the reason that was included was the ask was to update basic car plan and patrol plan, which are two distinctly separate concepts, but asked in the same way. So when it was asked that, we have to answer the question. So patrol plan, we update quarterly. In 2017, there was an attempt to update the basic cars. So for example, North Hollywood, we brought it up, they have 8 basic cars assigned to the location, and each basic car is the lead of their service, for example. So they each have a senior lead officer who covers each basic car. And then, but that is separate from how many officers we need in North Hollywood to match the demand of like call load and ensuring that we respond to emergency calls within 7 minutes, those items. So in that, it was attempted in 2017 based off of data from back in 2017. There was a recommendation that they would be increased to, I believe it was 202 basic cars, which would be an increase of 34 senior lead officers. And then, but the data from back then is different. It's about 7 years from when that was done. The city has changed. There are some areas that have increased streets, increased residential neighborhoods, and just the general understanding of where the basic ACARs in the communities that are involved have moved and shifted. So if we were to go for a remapping, we would recommend having to go through the process of understanding it again through an RFP.
Thank you. And I'll ask one more question before I pass it along to my colleagues. It's the expectation that the department respond to all emergency calls within 7 minutes. Do we know how we are doing on that expectation?
Yes. So our CompStat division does maintain an extraction periods every 4-week extraction periods, and through the last, as of December 6th, we only have 3 divisions which did not meet the 7-minute median response time. So that's 18 divisions that met it clearly. The 3 that didn't were slightly over. One was 7.4, one was 7.2, and then a 7.7.
So if I could just add to this, the code 3 response time is a CompStat topic. This is something that we look at every CompStat, evaluating them and talking to captains about what their strategies are and seeing how they're performing. And I would also, then, in this case, Devonshire and Mission, this is an indicator to us that it's consistent with our patrol recommendations. So Mission and Devonshire could use additional officers. The two kind of validate each other in my mind.
Yeah, but it looks like you're balancing it kind of close to the line, so you're getting pretty close, if not at the expectation. So appreciate that. Okay, Commissioner Garcia, any questions?
Thank you for this. Just a quick question in terms of the RFP, once issued and a vendor identified, when do we expect to see the results and the outcomes?
Well, I think the last one they did, it took
Approximately 4 years.
4
before
years,
the
so-
final report was presented.
And the question is, do we even have funding for that?
No. So, and I think before we went down that route, I think we'd want to have some internal discussions if we really need to go that route, or.
Let me just, the RFP for that basic car studies needs more discussion. First, cost budgeting. Secondly, it's going to tell us that we need more basic cars. It'll just tell us where and what the boundaries will be, and we don't have the people for that right now. So we'll probably need further discussion on that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Scobin?
Just for a point of clarity, are footbeat officers considered in part of this patrol plan?
No.
No.
No? And then you had made a comment about that the patrol plan, the numbers issued are based on staffing available. I'm curious if I heard that correctly. I'm curious is, do we monitor a second number of what we feel is actually needed?
So that comment was made in terms of we haven't updated since quarter 2 2023, and then each quarter it is presented to go for update. And then at 2023, the numbers were jumping exponentially due to the staffing factor, which was very high due to the COVID years. And then that would have increased us a significant amount each quarter, and we weren't able to at that moment. But patrol plan, the number that is spit out is the same whether we had 10,000 officers or 5,000 officers. It'll still say we need this many officers in patrol. That part isn't determined. It's just the proactive policing addition that we expect of our officers is. So currently, like we explained, the seven.
Hold on. So I think it's the opposite. So what we do is we identify what the need for officers is, and then via the transfer, we try to make adjustments to meet the need. So we don't take the number of officers we have and distribute them like, was that your question?
Well, I guess he was trying to make sure that understood, we know we have a shortage. So, I mean, just layman's, that would tell me that we don't have enough officers doing patrol than what's needed, wherever that's at. And so I was just curious, are we, creating a plan based on the realities of where we're staffed, or based on the realities of what each area is needed, so that we understand, where there might be a deficiency in.
Yeah, that's, so we don't, the calculation is not based on how many officers we currently have deployed. The calculation tells us how many officers we should have deployed. That's why you're seeing vacancies in some of these divisions, because we don't have the number that this calculation says we should have. And then what we'll do, personnel division will then, as transfers come out every 28 days, start deploying or shifting more officers to those divisions that show higher vacancy numbers.
And is that found on page 7 of this report? Like, for example, would it be accurate to say only 5 divisions show a negative?
Yes.
Meaning the number they actually need is.
That is accurate.
Right, so on page 6 or 7.
And that's compared to the DP 11 deployment. So as personnel moves bodies around in DP 12, 13 deployment will shift slightly depending on movements, people transferring, promoting, leaving the department, new hires. That will then, this demand in the green on page 7, that demand will stay the same for quarter 1, but the deployment in the blue column on the far left, that'll change each DP depending on how many we have assigned to patrol.
And just out of curiosity, what is the ultimate goal that we're working towards? I heard 7-minute response time, but why isn't it 4 or 5 or any other number? Just out of curiosity.
The 7 minute is the standard based off the workload. It's one call for that 911 call to come in. There's a 1 minute expectation that police service representative receives that call within 1 minute. The next minute is the police service representative dispatching that call to the patrol car, so that's 2 minutes. And then the expectation is that the officers respond to that priority call within 5 minutes. So that 7 minutes consists of the time someone picks up the phone and calls 911, it gets dispatched, and the officers responding to that location. So that is the standard. Our goal with the patrol plan is to ensure we have enough basic A cars to respond to the needs of the community. And anything above that 100% patrol plan is to try to address specifically additional concerns within a community that our officers can have time to do, and also factoring in the expectation that they're getting out of their car and doing that community engagement during times where there are no radio calls.
The 7 minutes is also statutorily regulated.
Thank you. Anyone have any other questions? No, well, thank you for this report. With that, I would move that we approve the report and take the recommended board action. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Thank you all. Move on to we're moving on to item 4E, department report relating to reporting incidents motivated by hatred or prejudice.
All right, good morning, members of the board. I'm sorry, I'm not Scott Williams. I'm here because he's handling a filing on a case right now. So I'm going to speak briefly, but I'd like to say good morning. And we will be discussing the updates and changes to our department hate crime policy. And I'll also provide some additional information regarding some capabilities that we've designed through our Peregrine platform as well, and our RMS integration. So I'm here with Detective Dar Brown, who's going to be the new hate crime coordinator for the LAPD. Detective Orlando Martinez will be separating from the department in the next few days, and she's going to be taking on the duties. So she will now be the department coordinator, as is mandated by California state law. She will be interfacing with the California Department of Justice, U.S. Department of Justice, and all of our partners to ensure that we are providing accurate data, providing timely information, and working in concert with all of our partners to ensure that hate crimes and hate incidents are addressed properly and investigated properly, and they go through the system to proper prosecution, and they're properly classified. So she will be addressing the specifics or any specific questions that may arise regarding this report that we've transmitted, and the compliance with Senate Bill 449, as well as the Penal Code, and all the changes that are being made to ensure that we are updated both with our publications, our physical publications, and with our digital products to ensure that we're in full compliance with California DOJ requirements. In addition, we're moving forward with having the ability on the CompStat side, just as a quick aside, to really get down to very specific information in our records management system via the Peregrine platform to identify and to stratify all of the reports that are incoming regarding both hate crimes and hate incidents. And it will allow us to have a more data-rich environment and really focus on specific trends as they occur in real time. If we're seeing things across the city that are of concern, and it will determine if we need to reach out to our partners regionally if we get alerts or if we see alarming trends, so that we can react much faster to those incidents. So for the specifics, I'm going to hand it over to Dara, and she's going to discuss the website updates and the brochure updates and the changes we've made to come into compliance.
Good morning. So recently, we were contacted by the California Department of Justice regarding necessary updates to our department policy in two areas on the LAPD website and within the brochure that we hand out to our victims. Our department's original Special Order 32 regarding reporting incidents motivated by hatred and prejudice and hate crimes was published on December 17th, 2020. And since then, the Assembly Bill 449 was signed into law on October 8th, 2023. Some of the changes that were made to be complying with the DOJ laws include clarifying some of the protected characteristics. For example, originally one of them is gender, and under that umbrella, now we also have gender expression. There's also the definition of terrorize, which has been added, and it reflects clarity for our officers to know how to apply that to their reporting. We've made the changes delineated by the California Department of Justice. They have gone through all the department levels of review, including the Office of Constitutional Policing, and we have worked diligently with the relevant teams within the department to update the policy for both the website and the brochure, which are now ready to be published. And we're counting on you and your ongoing support for our compliance efforts with the Department of Justice. Thank you.
And I just want to add two very brief things. I know there was a concern regarding hate crime training, the 6-year cycle, so we're making sure we're going to be in compliance with that. And then I know there was another reference to seeking out training and interaction with our diverse communities here in Los Angeles. And of course, that's going to continue through our various outreach efforts. So of course, we have the Museum of Tolerance. We have a lot of other outreach and contacts, both through our Office of Operations when they go out at the bureau level and at the divisional level to attend community events and specialized events with specific communities. And then, of course, we have within the department all of our specific coordinators who are assigned to our diverse community. Those will continue. And as an example, we just recently completed the grant funding for the Asian hate crime outreach. We've exhausted the funding on that grant, and that grant has come to a conclusion. I don't know if there are going to be additional grants available, but we are in constant contact with our partners at the California Department of Justice. And when those grants become available, we apply for them. Regardless of which community it is, because LA is the most diverse city on the planet Earth. We look to seek that outreach and take advantage of those funds so that we can establish deeper links within all the communities to make sure that they're aware of what menu of items are available from the department in terms of both hate crimes and hate incidents, and the importance of reporting them, properly tracking them, and reacting to them in real time so that we can spot trends and prevent more serious incidents from occurring. That concludes our presentation.
Thank you so much. I'll turn it over to Commissioner Scobin for questions.
Thank you so much. Obviously, a very sensitive and important topic. For clarity, you had mentioned we had fixed things and we were out of compliance. Can you elaborate on what areas was the department out of compliance, and do we feel we have systems and checks in place so that we don't become out of compliance?
So we were in compliance as far as having our hate crimes information provided from the department, but now it's just in line with the California DOJ. With the Assembly Bill, they made some changes, and those changes are now applied to LAPD.
Mostly wording and definition of terms.
Commissioner Garcia?
Yeah, the two items where we were out of compliance, were those identified by us, or did DOJ do an audit of our compliance.
The DOJ contacted us to let us know that we need to update to their verbiage.
Okay. Are we confident that, or have we done an exercise to ensure that we are in compliance across the board with the Assembly bill?
Yes, we have. We went through the whole policy, updated everything, and it's gone through at least 6 levels of review within the department.
Thank you.
Wonderful, and thank you for the report. Given this time, this is more important than ever that we deal with this and make sure that we're properly educating the community about both hate crimes and hate incidences and how important it is that, you know, reporting a hate incident can lead to, you know, really helpful investigative skills that could potentially thwart something even more major. So I think it's terrific that the department has put out a brochure about this. How are we actually getting it into the hands of the community? You mentioned kind of a lot of community partners and stuff. Are you trying to leverage them to make sure it gets to the right place?
I'll handle that one. So there are going to be a lot of touch points and opportunities for the department. Once we get this approved through the commission, we'll have multiple opportunities at our community events, at all of our community police stations, at all of our different centers where we have specific, like our headquarters building, all those opportunities to put the physical brochure there. And then, of course, our online outreach will go through lapdonline.org, will be generated by our various divisions. I think to be most effective, we need to really focus on those areas where the hate crime coordinator identifies spikes, our specific concerns, our things become, we become aware of things through either our federal partners, our state partners, our county partners. Those areas, if they're identified, will be emphasized, and then we'll work with the department and the city, our city partners across the street with the mayor's office and with the council, to identify specific points where we would go out to the community and provide both the physical brochure and direct them to our online resources as well, and then work in conjunction with the County Commission on Hate to make sure that, like Robin Toma and his people over there are working in sync with us to make sure that if we're seeing a similar trend countywide, we can address it both physically and digitally and be present in the space if items are need to be addressed.
Wonderful, thank you. And it's good that the California Department of Justice contacted us to say, hey, get in compliance and without, taking some kind of enforcement action or anything like that. But given, it sounded like the Assembly bill went into effect in like October of 2023. Now it's been a couple of years. I would see some quick reactions by the department, Office of Constitutional Policing or others identifying changes in the law and then putting it into a policy. Do we know if this just kind of fell through the cracks or what thought it was addressed but not fully incorporated?
I don't know exactly what happened with this particular issue. I do know, I can tell you the process. So we have our government liaison and legislative person that works for Chief of Staff, and you know them. Detective Sun follows all new legislation that comes out. He reads it, determines what offices are impacted. He sends that out to the department to say to all the office directors saying, please have your staff review this. If there's anything that impacts the department, let us know. And then Chief of Staff will put out a project for either changing the policy, developing training, whatever it may be. That is the process that happens with all legislation that changes. I don't know what happened with this one.
Okay, but there's at least a process in place, hoping so that there isn't other bills that are falling through the cracks, that there is a process once something changes for the department to actually operationalize that.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, with no other questions, thank you all for the presentation, for the work that you're doing. I would move that we approve the department's report and transmit it. Just approve the department's report. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. That motion passes. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 4F, the department's report relative to wearing of department-issued badge.
Okay, so last time I was here, it was good morning. Now it's good afternoon. So thank you for having me back. And so for this presentation, we're discussing Senate Bill 805. Senate Bill 805, or SB 805, is part of a suite of legislation that was passed and signed into law by Governor Newsom throughout the fall, and we're still having more as we conclude the year. This suite of legislation was focused on immigration enforcement. The language of the bill specifically states that the increasing use of face coverings, the absence of visible names, officer identification number, or other individually identifying information, the failure to be clear and conspicuously identifiable as federal law enforcement, or the use of unmarked vehicles during enforcement activities has raised concerns for public safety. The language goes on to cite specific incidents where members of the public were taken advantage of by people who became aware that federal immigration officers were not wearing identification and then used that as a way to then imitate federal immigration enforcement and commit crimes against these individuals. So in order to combat this degradation of trust, Senate Bill 805 requires that law enforcement agencies maintain and post a written policy on the visible identification of sworn personnel. The contents of the policy must have the following components. It must affirm the agency's commitment to transparency, accountability, and public trust. It also must require all sworn personnel to visibly display identification that includes their agency name and the officer's name, badge number, or both when performing enforcement duties. And then it also must restrict situations in which sworn personnel do not visibly display identification to specific, clearly defined, and limited circumstances. So with that in mind, I want to first stress that LAPD's policy for uniform and equipment wear, our display of badges and identification, was largely in compliance with this ahead of the law. The area that we really tightened up with the policy change that you have in front of you was that we talked about facsimile badges. Those are commonly referred to as cloth badges. We did not have a requirement that you had to have it embroidered with your badge number in it. In order to make sure that every iteration of our uniform is compliant with this law, we did make that adjustment. We also did go on to include the exceptions that the law allows for compliance with the badge identification combination. And those specific exemptions are undercover officers engaged in active operations or investigative activities, any situation where wearing personal protective equipment that physically prevents the visible display of identification. So that would normally be kind of like our hazmat personnel. They wouldn't necessarily have to do that if fully kitted out. Our SWAT personnel, and when they're performing SWAT activities, officers engaged in protective operations involving elected officials where the display of identification would compromise the safety or effectiveness of the protective detail. And finally, when there are exigent circumstances involving imminent danger to persons or property, the escape of a perpetrator, or the destruction of evidence. So this is more intended for if there's something that spontaneously happens in front of you, particularly if an off-duty officer sees something, declares that they're law enforcement, and then takes appropriate action for public safety, they would be exempt from this policy. So ultimately, I want to keep this brief and then open it up for questions, but I am heartened by the fact that the department's commitment to public transparency and accountability, it's demonstrated in what our uniform and equipment policy was before this date. We don't have any exemptions that really allowed for people not to display or be in compliance with this law ahead of time. And so I think this will be an easy change and implementation of policy for us.
Thank you, Captain. Commissioner Scobin, any questions?
No.
Commissioner Garcia, any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions real quickly. One, how are we, with regards to like plainclothes officer, I just want to make sure that no one's set up for failure or anything. So there are times when there are officers who may be conducting like surveillance. They're not, before they take an enforcement action, before they arrest them, maybe they need to have their badge clearly identified so that it doesn't look like it's just random people kidnapping people off the street, right? That seems like the purpose. But if they are actually conducting kind of surveillance or trying to gather information, are they obligated to display?
So the policy does make a distinction for undercover versus plainclothes, and I think that's something we constantly come back to. So our undercover operators do not need to have their ID or badge on them. Our plainclothes operators by policy need to be able to readily produce it. And so that's where you will see sometimes that they pull it out from under their shirt and then have it on a chain, or it's beneath their jacket, but they're able to pull it back and show that they have their badge or ID. And so that is still something that when they're taking that enforcement action, they can make it clear that they are law enforcement. And that's for their own safety as well, particularly if they do not want people calling and thinking that something is happening like kidnapping. So that's their standard practice, and that conforms with their training as well.
And it sounds like this change won't impact operations that much because it's kind of consistent with what they've been doing. Is the department sending out notices to officers so that they make sure that they're aware of this change in policy?
Yes, so there is a separate OCOP notice that is going out that talks about the other guidance that comes with the law, because there are smaller portions of the law that talk about the enforceability of any bail bondsman that is conducting immigration enforcement, that you can now stop and ask to make sure that they have a judicial warrant. So that notice is giving overall guidance for those situations. If they are to encounter it where a member of the public is saying, I don't believe these to be officers, they don't seem to have ID on them, so it gives specific guidance on the officer's actions plus supervisors at scene, and then a general advisement that directs them to the change in policy.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, with that, I would move that we approve the department's report. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you so much, Captain.
Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, we will now, the board will now recess into closed session. Okay, the commission has returned from closed session. I'll ask the executive director, Mr. Sibley, to please report on items 5A1 and 5A2.
Thank you, Commissioner. So items 5A1 and 2, at the regular meeting of the Board of Police Commissioners on December 16th, 2025, during the closed session, the board made the following findings, in each case by a 3-0 vote. So 5A1, which is an officer-involved shooting, case number 001-25. For tactics, tactical debrief, 1 Sergeant 1 and 2 police officers 2. For drawing and exhibition of a firearm, in policy, no further action, 2 police officers 2. For intermediate use of force, in policy, no further action, 1 police officer 2. And for lethal use of force, in policy, no further action, 1 police officer 2. And then item 5A2, which is an untactical, unintentional discharge, case number 002-25. For tactics, tactical debrief, 1 police officer 2+2. And for unintentional discharge, negligent discharge, administrative disapproval, 1 police officer 2+2. And that concludes the report out.
Thank you. I move to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much.